Hi guys, tonight we're travelling across immense grasslands, winding rivers and ancient forests to follow the complete history of the Sioux, the people who would one day become known as the last great warriors of the American frontier. You find yourself standing beneath a vast sky. The air is cool, a distant river glitters beneath the evening sun. Tall grasses sway in long waves that seem to stretch forever, somewhere nearby. Birds call across the wetlands. The world feels enormous and quiet at the same time. This story begins long before famous battles, cavalry columns, or frontier forts. It begins centuries before outsiders ever called these people Sioux. It begins in a North America that looks both familiar and completely different. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, feel free to share your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Your mind drifts backward through the centuries, long before written records describe them. The ancestors of the Sioux live in regions surrounding the upper Mississippi River and nearby woodlands. Rivers serve as highways, forests provide shelter, wetlands offer fish and waterfowl. Every season brings different opportunities and challenges. You walk beside families moving through landscapes shaped by ice ages long past. Children laugh near riverbanks. Elders observe weather patterns with practiced eyes. Hunters follow animal trails worn into the earth over generations. Life depends upon attention. The wind matters. The clouds matter. The movement of animals matters. Nothing is wasted. Archaeological evidence suggests that the ancestors of the Sioux belong to larger language communities that gradually spread across broad portions of North America over many centuries. Historical linguists studying Sioux languages have traced deep connections among related peoples scattered across the continent. Modern researchers at institutions including the University of Chicago and other major universities have helped reconstruct portions of this long migration story through language and archaeology. Yet many details remain uncertain. Historians still debate the precise timing of some population movements and cultural developments. The evidence survives only in fragments, leaving room for interpretation as scholars continue comparing archaeological discoveries and oral traditions. As evening approaches, smoke rises from village fires. You smell wood smoke drifting through cool air. It settles softly. People gather together after long days of work, meals are prepared, stories are shared. Knowledge passes from one generation to another without books or classrooms. Memory itself becomes a living library. An elder begins speaking. Children listen carefully. The stories explain where people came from, how the world works, and why certain customs must be respected, for a tale carries meaning beyond simple entertainment. In these early centuries, survival requires cooperation. No one thrives alone. Families form larger networks of relatives. Communities depend upon mutual support during difficult seasons. When winter arrives, preparation determines whether people endure comfortably or struggle through months of scarcity. You notice the practical rhythm of daily life. Women process food and maintain households. Men hunt and fish. Elders teach. Children learn through observation long before formal instruction becomes necessary. The division of responsibilities helps communities function efficiently. Yet every individual remains connected to a wider circle of obligations and relationships. The landscape itself shapes identity. Broad rivers carve pathways through the land. Seasonal flooding enriches fertile soil. Forests provide timber for homes and fuel for fires. Wild plants contribute essential nutrition throughout the year. Nothing exists separately. People and environment remain deeply connected. For a moment, it feels as though time slows completely. You hear water moving over stones. You hear insects humming. You hear the quiet sounds of ordinary life unfolding. Many centuries later, historians would focus heavily on warfare and dramatic conflicts. Yet most human lives are spent in quieter moments. The ancestors of the Sioux understand this truth well. Their history begins not with battles but with families building homes, gathering food, raising children, and maintaining traditions. The world around them continues changing, Climate patterns shift gradually over generations. Animal populations rise and fall, trade relationships expand, new ideas spread between neighbouring communities. Adaptation becomes essential. Communities that respond successfully to change endure. Those that fail face hardship. As darkness settles across the river valleys, fires glow warmly against the night. Families gather closer together. The scent of cooking food mixes with damp earth and drifting smoke. You can almost feel the warmth. You can almost hear the conversations. These early communities possess no knowledge of the enormous transformations waiting beyond the horizon of future centuries. They cannot imagine horses racing across the plains. They cannot imagine European ships crossing oceans. They cannot imagine railroads, telegraphs, or expanding nations. Those realities belong to distant futures. For now, life remains rooted in familiar rhythms. Season follows season. Generation follows generation. The foundations of Sioux culture strengthen steadily through accumulated experience and shared memory. Modern historians examining oral traditions and archaeological evidence often emphasize the remarkable continuity visible across centuries. Despite changing environments and evolving circumstances, certain values persist: respect for kinship, responsibility towards community, deep relationships with the natural world. These themes appear again and again. They become enduring threads connecting countless generations. Of course, no ancient society remains completely unchanged. New challenges constantly emerge. Trade introduces unfamiliar goods. Neighbouring groups influence one another. Political relationships shift over time. History never stands still. The ancestors of the Sioux are already participating in dynamic networks that stretch across broad regions of North America. Goods travel surprising distances. Information spreads through human connections. Communities remain far more interconnected than many people once assumed. Some scholars argue that these networks were even more extensive than earlier researchers believed. Others suggest caution when interpreting limited evidence. No clear agreement survives regarding every aspect of these early interactions, but most historians acknowledge the importance of long-distance exchange. Night deepens, stars appear overhead. The river reflects faint silver light beneath the sky. You sit beside a fire and watch sparks rise upward into darkness. Around you, families settle into sleep. The sounds of the village grow softer. Somewhere beyond the circle of light, unseen animals move quietly through the landscape. The future remains hidden, yet the foundations are already forming. The people who will eventually become known as the Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota are building traditions that will endure extraordinary transformations. Their descendants will cross vast distances. They will adapt to new environments. They will confront powerful empires and expanding nations. But all of that lies ahead. For now, you remain here at the beginning, beside ancient rivers and forest edges, where the earliest chapters of Sioux history emerge slowly from the deep past. The journey has only begun. The river remains close beside you as the centuries continue flowing forward. Morning sunlight spreads across the landscape. Mist rises gently from the water. Birds sweep low over marshes sparkling with dew. The world feels calm, ordered, and familiar. Yet beneath that calm surface, important changes are unfolding. The ancestors of the Sioux are developing ways of life that balance movement with stability. They are not simply wandering across the land without purpose. Instead, they follow seasonal patterns refined through generations of observation and experience. You walk toward a village standing near fertile ground. Wooden structures rise above the earth. Storage areas hold carefully preserved food. Families move through daily routines with practiced confidence. Children chase one another between homes while elders watch from shaded places nearby. Life here revolves around preparation. Every season carries responsibilities. Every season offers opportunities. In many communities, agriculture becomes an increasingly important part of survival. Women cultivate crops that have been grown across North America for centuries. Fields provide reliable food supplies that complement hunting, fishing, and gathering. You notice rows of corn stretching across open ground. Nearby, beans climb upward. Squash spreads across the soil. Together, these crops help sustain growing populations. The work is demanding but rewarding. During warm months, families spend long hours tending fields beneath the sun. Hands become rough from labor. Clothing gathers dust, yet the harvest promises security when winter eventually returns. The smell of fresh earth fills the air. You hear insects buzzing among green leaves. The scene feels peaceful. At the same time, hunting remains essential. Men travel through forests and grasslands tracking deer, elk, and smaller animals. Success requires patience, skill, and intimate knowledge of the environment. A hunter kneels beside tracks pressed into soft ground. He studies them carefully. Nothing escapes his attention. The direction of movement, the age of the tracks, and the condition of the surrounding vegetation all reveal valuable information. Knowledge like this cannot be learned quickly. It takes years, sometimes decades. Fishing also contributes significantly to daily life. Rivers and lakes provide dependable resources throughout much of the year. Nets, spears, and other tools help families gather food efficiently. Water shapes everything: transportation, trade, survival, community life. As afternoon sunlight brightens the village, you begin noticing something equally important. Daily life is not organized solely around obtaining food. Social relationships matter just as much. Families remain connected through extensive kinship networks. Responsibilities extend beyond individual households. People help one another. When someone faces hardship, relatives often provide support. When celebrations occur, entire communities participate. Success and struggle are rarely experienced alone. Modern historians frequently emphasize the importance of kinship within many indigenous societies of North America. Research conducted at institutions including Harvard University and the University of California has highlighted how family networks often functioned as the foundation of political, economic, and social organization. These relationships create stability. They also create belonging. As evening approaches, preparations begin for communal gatherings. Food is shared, stories are exchanged, news travels from family to family. You sit among listeners gathered around a fire. The flames crackle softly. Smoke drifts upward. The storyteller begins. His voice rises and falls with practiced rhythm. Familiar stories teach lessons about courage, wisdom, responsibility, and respect. Young listeners absorb these teachings naturally. Education occurs through experience, observation, and narrative rather than formal classrooms. The process feels remarkably human. Across cultures and centuries, people often learn best through stories. Yet historians continue debating certain aspects of how social structures evolved within these early communities. Some scholars emphasize gradual cultural adaptation over long periods, while others suggest that environmental pressures may have accelerated particular developments. Archaeological evidence supports both continuity and change, leaving room for ongoing discussion. The debate continues. The villages endure. Winter eventually arrives. The transformation feels dramatic. Cold winds sweep across the landscape. Snow settles over fields that only months earlier produced abundant harvests. Rivers begin freezing along their edges. Breath becomes visible in the morning air. You pull a fur garment tighter. The cold feels sharp, yet the community is prepared. Stored food fills containers and storage pits. Firewood has been gathered carefully. Homes provide shelter from harsh weather. Survival depends not on luck but on planning. Inside one dwelling, families gather close around a fire. Warmth fills the space. Children listen quietly. Outside, tow drifts against walls while darkness settles early across the land. These intimate winter moments strengthen social bonds. People spend more time together. Elders share knowledge accumulated over long lives. Young people learn traditions that connect them to generations stretching far into the past. The pace slows. Reflection becomes easier. The world beyond the firelight feels distant. For a moment, you focus on some small details. A wooden tool resting near the hearth, the scent of drying meat, the faint sound of wind brushing against walls. Such details rarely appear in dramatic historical accounts, yet they shape everyday existence far more than famous events ever could. As seasons continue passing, trade networks gradually expand. Travelers carry goods between communities separated by considerable distances. Valuable materials move from region to region through chains of exchange. You watch visitors arriving from another settlement. Greetings are exchanged. News travels quickly. Objects pass between hands. Trade brings more than material goods. It also carries ideas, technologies, and cultural influences. Communities learn from one another while preserving their own identities. The process unfolds slowly, generation after generation. No one recognizes how significant these developments will eventually become. Your mind drifts forward through decades. Children become parents. Parents become elders. New villages emerge while older ones change and adapt. Throughout these transformations, a distinct cultural world continues taking shape among the ancestors of the Sioux. Their lives remain connected to rivers, forests, and fertile lands. Their communities depend upon cooperation, knowledge, and careful preparation. Their traditions deepen through repetition and shared experience. The future still holds enormous changes. Horses have not yet arrived. The great buffalo hunting cultures of later centuries have not fully emerged. The famous plains warriors of popular imagination remain generations away. Yet the foundations already exist. You can see them everywhere, in family relationships, in seasonal routines, in communal responsibilities, in stories told beside winter on fires. These elements will endure long after landscapes, economies, and political realities begin changing around them. Night settles once more across the village. The stars return overhead. Fires glow warmly through the darkness. You listen to distant voices fading gradually into silence. The community rests after another day shaped by labor, cooperation, and tradition. Tomorrow will bring familiar tasks, but history is moving slowly, steadily, almost invisibly. The people living here cannot yet see the vast transformations approaching from distant horizons. New opportunities and new challenges are already gathering beyond their world. Soon, entire nations will begin taking clearer shape, and with them, the story of the Dakota. Nakota, and Lakota will enter a new chapter of growth and identity. The generations continue unfolding like ripples spreading across a calm river. The villages you have come to know do not remain frozen in time. People move, communities divide and reunite. New relationships form, while older ones evolve across centuries. The ancestors of the Sioux gradually develop into distinct groups connected by language, culture, and shared memory. Morning light spreads across a broad landscape of views, woodlands, and open country. You walk beside travelers moving along a familiar route. Their pace is steady. Their destination lies beyond the next horizon. Human societies are always changing. Even when those changes appear slow from within, the people who will eventually be known as the Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota are experiencing such transformations now. The process is gradual, almost imperceptible, yet deeply important. Language remains one of the strongest bonds connecting these communities. Families separated by distance can still recognize shared words and familiar ways of speaking. Stories retain common themes. Ceremonies preserve related traditions. Kinship ties stretch across large regions. At the same time, differences begin emerging. Geography plays a role. Distance plays a role. Local experiences matter too. Over many generations, distinct branches develop within the larger Sioux world. The eastern communities become known as the Dakota. Other groups emerge with identities that historians later identify as Nakota and Lakota. These distinctions are real, Yet so are their connections. You can imagine them as branches growing from the same ancient tree. Each branch follows its own direction while remaining linked to common roots. Modern linguistic research conducted at institutions including Yale University and Stanford University has reinforced the understanding that these groups share deep historical relationships reflected in language patterns and oral traditions. Such evidence helps historians trace connections across centuries that written records alone cannot fully capture. The exact timeline remains debated. Some scholars emphasize gradual separation over extended periods. Others suggest that environmental and political pressures may have accelerated the development of distinct identities. Historians continue examining archaeological evidence, language studies, and oral histories to better understand the process. No single explanation satisfies every question. The past rarely offers such simplicity. As afternoon arrives, you find yourself near a gathering where several communities meet. Families exchange news, traders display goods, children encounter distant relatives they may only see once every few years. The atmosphere feels lively, yet peaceful. A woman carefully examines crafted tools brought from another region. Nearby, hunters compare observations about animal migrations. Elders discuss weather patterns and changing conditions across the landscape. Information has all value. Knowledge travels. Relationships matter. You notice how identity operates on multiple levels at once. A person belongs to a family. That family belongs to a larger community. The community belongs to a broader people connected through language, tradition, and history. None of these loyalties cancel the others. They reinforce one another. This layered social structure helps communities remain resilient during difficult times. When challenges arise, support can come from many directions. The seasons continue turning. Spring floods nourish fertile lands. Summer brings long days of labor. Autumn fills storage areas with harvested food. Winter gathers everyone closer together, inside a warm dwelling during one cold evening. An elder speaks to younger listeners. The fire crackles softly. Outside, Bo drifts through darkness. Inside, memory remains alive. The elder describes ancestors who lived many generations earlier. He recounts migrations, alliances, hardships, and triumphs. The stories are not merely entertainment, they preserve identity itself. Without memory, a people can lose their place in the world. Without stories, the past becomes silent. You listen carefully. The words seem timeless. Historical records created much later often focus on leaders and conflicts. Yet oral traditions reveal another perspective. They emphasize relationships, responsibilities, and continuity across generations. They remind people where they belong and what obligations they carry. This cultural foundation grows increasingly important as communities expand across broader territories. The landscape itself begins influencing the development of different groups. Eastern regions offer one set of opportunities. Western areas present others. Rivers remain important, but environments vary significantly from place to place. Adaptation becomes necessary. Always necessary. The people respond with remarkable flexibility. You walk through a settlement where artisans shape tools from stone, bone, and wood. Every object reflects accumulated knowledge. Nothing is random. Every design has been tested through repeated use. Nearby, a child watches an elder work. Questions are asked. Answers are given. Learning never stops. The transfer of knowledge happens continuously. Skills pass from one generation to the next through observation and practice. No written manuals exist. Human experience serves as the primary archive. The process is surprisingly effective. It has sustained communities for centuries. As the years pass, relationships with neighbouring peoples remain important. Alliances develop, trade expands, occasional conflicts occur. No society exists in complete isolation. You meet travellers carrying goods from distant places. Some items seem unfamiliar. Others are instantly recognisable. Every exchange adds another thread to an increasingly complex network of connections stretching across large portions of North America. Historians studying these networks have increasingly emphasized their sophistication. Research associated with scholars from Princeton University and other major institutions suggests that indigenous trade systems often connected regions far more extensively than earlier generations of historians once believed. The evidence continues growing. So does appreciation for the complexity of these societies. Still, important questions remain unresolved. Some historians argue that trade relationships play the dominant role in shaping cultural developments. Others place greater emphasis on environmental adaptation and local decision-making. The discussion remains active among scholars. For the people themselves, however, daily life continues regardless of future academic debates. Food must be gathered, children must be raised, communities must endure. As dusk settles over the land, you observe a small family returning home. Their clothing carries traces of dust from travel. Their conversation is quiet. A child leans sleepily against a parent after a long day. The moment feels intimate. Entire civilizations are built from such moments, not only from battles or treaties, not only from famous leaders, but from ordinary lives lived well. The Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota worlds continue growing. Their identities become clearer with each passing generation. Distinct communities emerge while maintaining connections to shared traditions and histories. The process resembles a river dividing into multiple channels. Separate paths, common origins, the future remains hidden beyond distant horizons. Yet forces already gathering will eventually reshape the continent. New technologies, new diseases, new opportunities, and new dangers will arrive from far away. The people cannot yet see those changes. Neither can you. For now, the stars emerge once more above the dark landscape. Fires glow within scattered settlements. Stories continue flowing from elder to child. Families rest after another day of work and companionship. The branches of a great people are taking shape. Their roots run deep, and their story is only beginning to reveal its full strength. The roots continue growing deeper. As the Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota communities become more distinct, they remain connected by something larger than geography. Beneath daily labor, seasonal migrations, and family responsibilities lies a rich spiritual world that shapes how people understand themselves, one another, and the land around them. You awaken before sunrise. The air feels cool and still. A faint glow appears along the eastern horizon. Grass bends beneath beads of dew. The world seems suspended between darkness and light. Nearby, a small group gathers quietly. No one rushes. No one speaks loudly. The moment itself feels sacred. For the Sioux peoples, spirituality is not confined to special places or isolated ceremonies. It exists throughout daily life. The natural world is not viewed as separate from humanity. Rivers, animals, winds, hills, and skies all possess meaning within a larger living reality. You notice how carefully people observe their surroundings. Nothing appears ordinary. Every detail matters. A distant eagle circling above the prairie, a sudden change in weather, the return of migrating birds. Such events can carry significance beyond their immediate appearance. The world is alive with relationships. This understanding influences every aspect of existence. Children learn early that respect extends beyond human beings. Hunters offer gratitude after successful hunts. Families treat resources carefully. Elders teach that survival depends not only upon skill, but also upon maintaining proper relationships with the forces that sustain life. The lesson remains simple. Respect creates balance. Balance creates survival. As the sun rises higher, village life begins stirring around you. Fires are rekindled. Food is prepared. People move through familiar tasks, yet even ordinary activities carry deeper meaning. Work itself becomes part of a larger moral framework. Generosity matters. Humility matters. Responsibility matters. A person earns respect not merely through wealth or strength, but through service to family and community. You watch an elder quietly distribute food to several households facing temporary hardship. No announcement follows, no reward is expected. The act speaks for itself. These values help strengthen social bonds across generations. Communities depend upon cooperation far more than individual achievement. Personal success means little if neighbours suffer. The principle appears repeatedly in daily life, in stories, in ceremonies. As afternoon approaches, preparations begin for an important gathering. Families arrive from nearby settlements. Children play together while adults exchange news and greetings. You sense anticipation in the air. Something meaningful is about to occur. Ceremonies serve many purposes. Some mark seasonal transitions, others celebrate important events, still others strengthen communal identity and spiritual connection. Music begins softly, voices rise together, rhythms echo across the open landscape. The sounds feel both powerful and calming. You notice how participants move with purpose and attention. Every gesture reflects traditions refined through generations. The ceremony connects living participants to ancestors who performed similar acts long before. Time seems to fold inward. Past and present meet. For a brief moment, centuries feel very close together. Many aspects of Sioux spiritual traditions would later be recorded by observers, ethnographers, and community members themselves. Historical research conducted by scholars at institutions including Columbia University and the University of California has highlighted the central role of ceremony, kinship, and spiritual responsibility within Sioux societies. These traditions helped maintain cultural continuity. They also provided guidance during periods of uncertainty, yet scholars continue discussing how particular ceremonies evolved over time. Some historians emphasize remarkable continuity stretching across centuries. Others argue that changing environments and historical circumstances influence certain practices more than earlier researchers recognized. The evidence suggests both persistence and adaptation. Human cultures often contain elements of each. As evening arrives, you sit near a group of storytellers. The scent of wood smoke drifts through cooling air. Orange firelight dances across attentive faces. An elder begins speaking. The story unfolds slowly, with pauses that allow listeners to reflect. It explains moral responsibilities, spiritual truths, and lessons learned from previous generations. Stories perform many functions. They entertain, they educate, they preserve identity. Without written records, oral tradition becomes one of the most important tools for maintaining collective memory. Every storyteller carries a portion of the past. Every listener carries it forward. The responsibility feels enormous. Yet it is accepted naturally. You notice a young child listening with complete concentration. Questions occasionally interrupt the narrative. The elder smiles and answers patiently. Learning remains communal. Knowledge belongs to everyone. Outside the circle of firelight, darkness spreads across the prairie. Stars begin appearing one by one. The vast sky seems almost endless. You look upward. The sight inspires quiet reflection. For countless generations, people have gazed at these same stars. They have asked similar questions about existence, purpose, and belonging. Different cultures offer different answers, yet the questions remain remarkably familiar. Who are we? Where do we belong? How should we live? The Sioux world provides answers rooted in relationship rather than isolation. Human beings exist within a network of obligations extending outward to family, community, ancestors, and the natural world. No one stands entirely alone. The idea offers comfort. It also creates responsibility. As seasons pass, these teachings continue shaping young lives. Children grow into adults who understand their place within a larger social and spiritual framework. They inherit traditions while preparing to pass them onward. The process never truly ends. Generation follows generation. Memory becomes continuity. You spend time observing everyday moments that reveal these values in practice. A grandmother patiently teaching a child, hunters sharing food after a successful expedition, families gathering to assist one another during difficult periods. These scenes may appear ordinary, Yet they form the foundation of cultural endurance. Historians often focus on dramatic turning points because they are easier to document. Battles leave records, political negotiations leave records, crises leave records. Daily life rarely does, yet daily life shapes everything. The spiritual and social values developing within Sioux communities will eventually help them navigate extraordinary challenges. They will face immense changes in the centuries ahead. New technologies will arrive, foreign powers will expand, entire ways of life will be tested. The strength to endure those challenges is already growing here. Around these fires, within these families, through these stories, night settles fully across the land. The stars shine brightly overhead. The air grows cooler with each passing hour. You listen to the final words of an elder's story before silence gradually returns. Families begin resting. Fires burn lower. The prairie becomes quiet once more. Yet beneath that quiet surface, a powerful cultural world continues thriving. Its traditions remain alive. Its memory remains strong. And beyond the horizon, new encounters are beginning to draw closer. The prairie stretches endlessly beneath a bright morning sky. The generations continue moving forward, carrying their traditions, stories, and responsibilities with them. Yet the world beyond their familiar territories is becoming increasingly connected. New trade routes are expanding. Distant communities are exchanging goods and knowledge. Far beyond the horizon, events are unfolding that will eventually transform the lives of the Sioux forever. For now, however, change arrives slowly, almost quietly. You travel beside a group of traders following a well-known route across the landscape. Their pace is steady. Packs contain valuable goods gathered from different regions. Some items come from nearby communities. Others have travelled remarkable distances through chains of exchange connecting countless peoples. The journey requires patience. It also requires trust. Trade depends upon relationships as much as products. As the travellers approach another settlement, greetings are exchanged warmly. Familiar faces emerge from among the lodges. News travels quickly between communities. Information often proves just as valuable as material goods. You notice objects changing hands, carefully crafted tools, decorative items, rare materials gathered from distant places. Each object carries a story. Every exchange strengthens connections. Long before European arrival, North America contains extensive networks of trade and communication. Rivers serve as major transportation corridors. Footpaths connect regions separated by vast distances. Travelers move knowledge, technology, and ideas from one community to another. The continent is not isolated. It is interconnected, far more interconnected than many outsiders later assumed. Research conducted by archaeologists and historians at institutions including Harvard University and Stanford University has demonstrated the remarkable complexity of indigenous trade systems. Materials originating hundreds of miles apart have been found together at archaeological sites, revealing networks that operated successfully for generations. The evidence continues surprising researchers. The scale was impressive. As afternoon sunlight brightens the grasslands, you observe a gathering where traders and families mingle together. Conversations flow easily. News about weather patterns, hunting conditions, and regional development spreads through the crowd. Information moves quick, especially when it matters. A traveller describes conditions near a distant river. Another shares reports about neighbouring communities. Elders listen carefully while comparing these accounts to their own observations. Knowledge creates preparation. Preparation improves survival. The connection feels obvious. You notice how diplomacy develops alongside trade. Relationships between communities require constant maintenance. Alliances, friendships, and mutual obligations help reduce conflict while encouraging cooperation. No society exists entirely alone. Every group depends upon others to some degree. This reality becomes increasingly important as populations grow and territories overlap. The evening air carries the scent of cooking food as visitors settle into temporary camps. Fires flicker across the landscape, laughter drifts through the darkness. Children from different communities play together without concern for the political complexities adults occasionally discuss. The scene feels peaceful, comfortably human, yet beyond the western horizon, forces already exist that will eventually alter everything. Across the Atlantic Ocean, European nations continue exploring, trading, competing, and expanding. Ships cross waters that indigenous peoples have never seen. Empires pursue wealth and influence in lands they barely understand. At first, these developments seem impossibly distant. They have no immediate impact here. Life continues normally. Season follows season, generation follows generation. But history often changes long before people notice. The first indirect effects arrive through trade networks. New materials begin appearing far from their original sources. Stories circulate about unfamiliar peoples living beyond known territories. The reports sound strange, almost unbelievable. Yet curiosity grows. Who are these newcomers? Where did they come from? What do they want? No clear answers exist yet. You sit beside a fire listening as travelers discuss rumors gathered from distant communities. Some accounts conflict with one another. Others seem exaggerated. Human beings have always struggled to separate accurate information from speculation. The uncertainty feels familiar, even today. As darkness deepens, sparks drift upward into a sky crowded with stars. The storyteller speaking tonight focuses not on distant rumors but on older traditions. Familiar narratives provide stability during uncertain times. People listen carefully. The stories matter, especially now, when communities encounter unfamiliar situations. Cultural memory becomes increasingly valuable. Traditions help people interpret change without losing their identity. The Sioux ancestors understand this instinctively. They adapt when necessary. They preserve what matters. This balance between continuity and flexibility will become one of their greatest strengths. Historical evidence suggests that early encounters between indigenous peoples and Europeans often occurred indirectly through expanding trade networks long before face-to-face meetings became common. Goods travelled faster than people. Information travelled faster than both. Historians continue debating the exact sequence of certain early contacts in various regions. Some scholars emphasize the role of commerce in spreading awareness of Europeans. Others argue that migration patterns and political developments played equally important roles. The evidence remains incomplete. The discussion continues. Meanwhile, ordinary life persists. The next morning, hunters prepare for a journey. Families tend crops and gather resources. Elders teach younger generations daily responsibilities cannot wait for distant historical forces. You walk beside a young man learning from an experienced hunter. The elder points toward tracks crossing soft ground. Both stop, both observe. No words are necessary at first. Knowledge often begins with attention. The lesson has little to do with politics or trade. Yet it reveals something important. Communities survive because they remain deeply connected to their environment. Practical skills, cultural values, and social cooperation continue forming the foundation of life. These strengths will soon face new tests. For now, however, the land remains familiar. The rivers still flow, the villages still prosper, the stories still endure. As years pass, reports about distant newcomers become more frequent. Strange goods appear with increasing regularity. New opportunities emerge alongside new uncertainties. No one can fully predict what lies ahead. Not the traders, not the elders, not the families gathered around evening fires. The future remains hidden, yet subtle signs of transformation are appearing everywhere. You sense it in conversation. You sense it in trade exchanges. You sense it in the growing awareness that the world extends farther than anyone once imagined. The stars emerge again above the prairie. Their light feels unchanged. Beneath them, however, history is beginning to accelerate. The Sioux world stands on the edge of a new era, one shaped by opportunity, one shaped by challenge, and one that will soon bring encounters unlike anything their ancestors have previously known. The The changes that once drifted across the horizon as distant rumors are beginning to arrive more directly. You wake to the sound of wind moving through tall grass. Morning sunlight spills across the prairie. The land still appears familiar. Rivers continue flowing. Villages continue thriving. Families continue following seasonal routines that have guided them for generations. Yet beneath this familiar surface, powerful forces are gathering. The world is becoming larger and more dangerous as trade networks expand. New goods reach Sioux communities with increasing frequency. Metal tools appear alongside traditional ones. Iron blades prove stronger and more durable than many earlier materials. Copper kettles replace older containers in some households. At first, these objects seem like practical improvements, useful additions, nothing more. A hunter examining a metal knife immediately recognizes its advantages. A woman preparing food appreciates a sturdy kettle that lasts longer than previous alternatives. New technologies often arrive quietly. Their consequences arrive later. You watch traders unpack goods obtained through long chains of exchange. People gather around with curiosity. Hands carefully examine unfamiliar materials. Questions fill the air. Where did this come from? How was it made? Can more be obtained? Trade is changing daily life. Slowly at first, then more rapidly. The process creates opportunities. Communities gain access to tools that improve efficiency and expand possibilities. Yet dependence on trade also introduces new vulnerabilities. Resources once produced locally increasingly become tied to distant relationships and events beyond local control. This balance proves complicated. Benefits and risks travel together. As afternoon settles across the landscape, another change begins making itself felt. Disease. Unlike metal tools or curative goods, disease arrives without invitation. It travels along the same routes that carry commerce and communication. Communities encounter illnesses that their ancestors never faced. The consequences can be devastating. People do not understand the cause, they only witness the results. A village that seemed healthy one season may suffer greatly the next. Families lose loved ones. Elders carrying generations of knowledge disappear unexpectedly. Entire communities struggle to recover. The emotional weight feels enormous. The uncertainty feels even worse. You sit beside a family mourning a respected elder. The fire burns quietly. Voices remain subdued. Outside, life continues. Children still play. Hunters still prepare for journeys. But something has changed. An absence remains. Historical records and archaeological evidence indicate that epidemic diseases spread through many parts of North America before some communities ever encountered Europeans directly. Research from institutions including Yale University and the University of California has emphasized how disease profoundly altered demographic patterns across the continent. The full scale remains debated. Estimating population losses is difficult. Evidence is often incomplete. Some historians argue that certain regions experienced especially severe declines. Others caution against broad conclusions when documentation remains limited. The discussion continues among scholars. What remains beyond debate is the reality of disruption. Communities face challenges unlike anything in living memory, yet they endured. The resilience is remarkable. As years pass, changing conditions encourage new alliances and new rivalries. Access to trade becomes increasingly important. Communities positioned near valuable routes gain advantages. Others adapt by strengthening relationships with neighboring groups. Politics grows more complex. Choices become more difficult. You observe leaders gathering to discuss regional developments. Their conversation is careful and thoughtful. Every decision carries consequences extending far beyond the present moment. Leadership requires patience. It also requires foresight. The people guiding these communities understand that survival depends upon more than strength alone. Wisdom matters just as much, perhaps more. The evening air grows cooler. Smoke rises from cooking fires scattered across the settlement. The familiar scent brings comfort despite uncertain times. You pause and watch families preparing meals. Children help where they can. Elders offer advice. The ordinary routines continue. These moments matter. During periods of change, everyday life often becomes an anchor. Familiar responsibilities provide stability when larger forces seem unpredictable. The stars emerge overhead. The prairie settles into darkness. Around one fire, travelers share stories gathered from distant regions. Reports describe shifting trade patterns, unfamiliar groups, and growing competition for resources. Some accounts sound alarming, others sound hopeful. Most contain elements of both. Human beings have always faced uncertainty this way. Information arrives imperfectly. Decisions must be made anyway. You listen carefully. The conversation reveals a world becoming increasingly interconnected. Events occurring hundreds of miles away now influence local realities. Communities cannot isolate themselves completely from broader developments. The web of relationships continues expanding. Some scholars suggest that this period marks a critical transition in Sioux history. According to research discussed by historians associated with Princeton University and other major institutions, the combination of trade, disease, migration, and political adaptation created conditions that would eventually reshape the balance of power across the plains. The exact mechanisms remain debated. The broader transformation is clear. The future is approaching. One morning, while walking beyond the village, you notice horse tracks. Not many, only a few. Their appearance feels almost insignificant, yet history often hides within small details. Horses are still rare in this northern world. Most people have never owned one. Many have never seen one. Yet reports about these animals are spreading northward through trade networks and human connections. The stories sound extraordinary. Animals capable of carrying people across great distances. Animals that can transform hunting and travel. Animals that can change warfare itself. For now, they remain distant. But not for long. The possibility lingers in conversation. It sparks curiosity. Perhaps even excitement. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. Communities adapt to changing circumstances with determination and creativity. New tools are incorporated where useful. Old traditions remain valued. Cultural identity persists despite growing pressures. The balance is never easy, yet it holds. You spend one final evening beside a fire watching sparks rise into a moonlit sky. Around you, people tell stories, share meals, and prepare for tomorrow. Their ancestors built these traditions over centuries. Their descendants will need them, especially in the years ahead. The world is changing faster now. Trade has opened new possibilities. Disease has revealed new dangers. Political relationships are becoming more complex. And somewhere beyond the western horizon, a revolution is approaching on 4 legs. A revolution that will transform the Sioux world more completely than almost anything before it. The age of the horse is drawing nearer. The prairie feels larger than ever. The horizon stretches endlessly beneath a sky and so wide that it seems to swallow distance itself. Winds sweep across open grasslands. Herds move like dark waves across the earth. Rivers cut silver paths through an immense landscape that appears almost without limits. You stand at the edge of a changing world. The Sioux peoples are changing with it for generations. Communities have lived among woodlands, river valleys, and fertile regions where farming, hunting, and seasonal movement exist in careful balance. Now, increasing numbers of Lakota groups begin moving farther westward. The process is gradual. It unfolds across decades. Families do not simply wake one morning and abandon everything they know. Migration occurs through countless individual decisions shaped by opportunity, necessity, and experience. One season leads to another. One generation follows the next. The frontier of their world slowly expands. You travel beside a group moving toward lands beyond the Missouri River. The journey feels both familiar and uncertain. Elders carry memories of older territories. Younger people gaze eagerly toward new horizons. The air smells different here. The sky seems bigger. The grasslands stretch farther than the eye can follow. These western regions offer tremendous possibilities. Game animals are abundant. Open spaces allow greater mobility. New relationships and new challenges await those willing to adapt. Adaptation becomes the key. Again and again, throughout human history, as Lakota communities enter the Great Plains in increasing numbers, they encounter an environment unlike the woodland regions their ancestors knew best. Forests become less common. Vast grasslands dominate the landscape. Weather patterns feel harsher and more dramatic. The wind never seems completely still. Not for long. You feel it against your face as you walk. Cloud shadows race across the prairie. Thunderstorms gather with astonishing speed. Winter blizzards can appear suddenly. Summer heat shimmers above endless grass. The plains demand respect. They also reward skill. Communities quickly learn how to thrive within this environment. Knowledge accumulates through observation and experience. Hunters study animal movements. Families identify reliable water sources. Travelers memorize routes stretching across enormous distances. Nothing is left to chance. Too much depends upon preparation. One evening, you sit beside a small camp overlooking rolling grasslands glowing beneath the setting sun. The beauty feels almost overwhelming. Golden light covers everything. The sky seems endless. The silence feels alive. Nearby, an elder speaks quietly to younger listeners about the responsibilities that accompany expansion into new territories. The lesson is practical, but also moral. A people may enter new lands, yet they must still maintain balance, respect, and unity. Survival depends upon more than courage alone. It depends upon wisdom. The westward movement brings increased contact with other indigenous nations already living across portions of the plains. Some relationships become cooperative, others become competitive. Trade opportunities emerge alongside occasional conflicts. The reality is complicated. Human societies rarely fit simple categories. You observe a meeting between representatives from different communities. Discussions proceed carefully. Mutual interests encourage cooperation. But everyone remains aware that resources and territories matter deeply. Diplomacy becomes essential. So does flexibility. Historians studying this period frequently emphasize the dynamic nature of plain societies. Research associated with scholars from the University of Chicago and Columbia University has highlighted how migration, environmental adaptation, and intertribal relationships shape the development of powerful plains cultures long before large-scale American expansion reached the region. The plains were never empty. They were never static. They were vibrant and interconnected. Yet important scholarly debates remain. Some historians place greater emphasis on environmental opportunities driving Lakota expansion westward. Others argue that political pressures and competition in eastern regions played equally significant roles. The evidence supports multiple influences. No single factor explains everything. As years pass, Lakota communities become increasingly comfortable within their new surroundings. Children grow up knowing the prairie as home. Hunters master techniques suited to open grasslands. Families adapt housing, travel patterns, and seasonal routines to match local conditions. The transformation feels natural, almost inevitable, yet it represents one of the most important developments in Sioux history. A new identity is taking shape, not replacing older traditions, building upon them. You notice this evolution in countless small details. Clothing reflects environmental needs. Hunting practices adjust to local wildlife. Stories incorporate experiences unique to the plains. Culture remains alive because it adapts, not because it stands still. The evening wind carries the scent of distant rain. Dark clouds gather along the horizon, while sunlight still shines across parts of the prairie. The contrast is beautiful and slightly unsettling. Nature here constantly reminds people of its power. A sudden storm could transform a pleasant day into a struggle for survival. Lightning flashes across open country. Thunder rolls across vast distances. Families learn to read the sky carefully. The lesson becomes second nature. Pay attention. Always pay attention. One afternoon, while traveling with hunters, you encounter enormous herds moving across the grasslands. The sight is astonishing. thousands upon thousands of animals. Their movement creates a low rumbling sound that seems to rise from the earth itself. The buffalo. They are becoming increasingly central to life on the plains. Not yet the absolute foundation they will soon become, but already impossible to ignore. Their abundance offers opportunities unlike anything many communities previously experienced. Food, clothing, tools, shelter materials. The possibilities appear endless. Young hunters watch the herds with fascination. Elders recognize both opportunity and responsibility. The animals provide much, but successful use requires knowledge, discipline, and respect. Nothing can be wasted. Nothing should be taken for granted. As darkness settles over another camp, you sit listening to distant buffalo movements beyond the firelight. The sound blends with the wind moving through grass. The prairie feels immense, yet somehow personal. Families gather together beneath the stars. Stories continue flowing from one generation to the next. Traditions endure even as environments change. The Lakota world is expanding. Its people are adapting successfully to a landscape that once seemed unfamiliar. The process has not been easy, but it has been transformative. Tomorrow will bring new journeys, new discoveries, and new challenges. The Great Plains are already reshaping the future of the Sioux peoples, and soon another powerful force will arrive to accelerate that transformation beyond anything previously imagined. The horse is coming. With it will come speed, mobility, and possibilities that will alter the plains forever. The wind rushes across the prairie with a steady voice that seems older than memory itself. You stand beneath a vast blue sky watching riders move across open grassland. Their silhouettes glide over distant hills with remarkable speed. Horses carry them effortlessly across terrain that once demanded long days of walking. The sight feels natural, almost timeless, yet only a few generations earlier it would have seemed extraordinary. The horse is transforming the Sioux world, perhaps more dramatically than any previous change. For centuries, the ancestors of the Sioux travelled on foot. Goods were carried by people or by dogs pulling simple transport frames. Hunting required careful planning. Travel distances remained limited by human endurance. Life functioned well. Communities adapted successfully, yet horses introduce entirely new possibilities. The effects spread gradually at first, then rapidly, as horses move northward through trade networks and exchanges between indigenous peoples. Lakota communities begin acquiring increasing numbers of them. The animals prove useful almost immediately. Travel becomes faster. Trade becomes easier. Hunting becomes more efficient. The advantages are impossible to ignore. You watch a young rider guiding a horse across rolling grasslands. Dust rises beneath moving hooves. The animal responds to subtle movements and quiet commands. Horse and rider move together, almost as one. The partnership feels powerful. Children grow up dreaming of owning horses. Families measure wealth partly through horse ownership. Skilled riders earn admiration throughout their communities. A new culture is emerging, one built upon mobility, one perfectly suited to the Great Plains. Historians frequently describe the arrival of horses as one of the most significant developments in the history of plain societies. Research from institutions including Yale University and Stanford University has emphasized how horses reshape transportation, economics, warfare, hunting practices, and social organization across much of Western North America. The transformation is difficult to overstate. Almost every aspect of life changes, yet the process remains distinctly Sioux. The people do not abandon their traditions. Instead, they incorporate horses into existing cultural values and social structures. New opportunities strengthen rather than replace important elements of community identity. Adaptation once again proves essential. You travel with a hunting party preparing for a buffalo hunt. The atmosphere feels focused but calm. Riders inspect equipment carefully. Horses stand ready nearby, their breath visible in the cool morning air. The anticipation is unmistakable. Everyone understands the importance of success. Buffalo provide food and countless other necessities. A productive hunt supports families and communities alike. Before horses, such hunts were often more difficult and limited. Now riders can move quickly across large areas, following herds over considerable distances. The difference is remarkable. You feel the energy as the hunt begins. The ground trembles faintly beneath moving animals. Wind rushes past. Riders coordinate with one another through experience and skill developed over years of practice. Every movement matters. Every decision carries consequences. The hunt reflects more than individual ability. It demonstrates cooperation, planning, and communal responsibility. Success belongs to many people, not only the hunters. Later, as meat is prepared and distributed, families throughout the camp benefit from the day's efforts. The connection between individual action and collective well-being remains clear. It always has. Horses strengthen that connection. They do not replace it. As afternoon sunlight warms the prairie, you notice another important change. Distances that once seemed enormous now feel manageable. Communities maintain broader networks of communication. Travelers cover greater territory in less time. The world grows larger and smaller at the same time. News spreads more quickly, trade expands, relationships extend across wider regions. Horses increase mobility in ways previous generations could scarcely imagine. Young people adapt especially quickly. They learn riding skills from an early age. Confidence grows with experience. The horse becomes not merely a tool, but an important part of daily life and personal identity. You watch children practicing under careful supervision. Their laughter carries across the grasslands. The future is already visible. Nearby, elders observe with quiet satisfaction. They recognize the opportunities these animals provide. They also understand the responsibilities involved. Horses require care. They require protection. They require knowledge. Nothing valuable comes without obligations. As evening approaches, camp settles into a comfortable rhythm. Horses graze nearby while families gather around fires. The scent of cooking food drifts through cooling air. The atmosphere feels content, prosperous, alive. Stories shared tonight increasingly include horses. Adventures become larger. Journeys become longer. Experiences once impossible now enter the realm of everyday reality. Culture adapts. Memory expands. Tradition continues growing. Yet the horse brings us challenges as well as opportunities. Wealth differences sometimes become more noticeable as some families accumulate larger herds than others. Competition for resources can increase. Raiding between different groups becomes more significant in some regions. Human societies remain complex. No innovation solves every problem. Historians continue debating certain aspects of how horse culture developed across the plains. Some scholars emphasize rapid transformation occurring within only a few generations. Others argue that adaptation was more gradual and varied among different communities. The evidence reveals elements of both perspectives. Different regions experience change differently. The broader impact remains undeniable. One night, while sitting beside a fire beneath a sky crowded with stars, you listen to an elder reflecting on the changes witnessed during a lifetime. The horses have brought speed. They have brought opportunity. They have brought new responsibilities. The elder pauses. Firelight flickers across thoughtful faces. The silence feels meaningful. Everyone understands that their world is evolving. The Great Plains are becoming home in ways previous generations could not have imagined. Horses have accelerated this transformation, helping create a society uniquely adapted to one of the most demanding and beautiful environments on Earth. The prairie wind moves softly through camp. Horses shift nearby in the darkness. Their presence feels reassuring, familiar, essential. Tomorrow, riders will travel farther than their ancestors once could. Hunters will follow buffalo across immense distances. Families will maintain connections stretching across broad regions of the plains. The Sioux world has entered a new age, an age of mobility, an age of expansion, and an age that will soon place the buffalo at the very center of life itself. The prairie seems to breathe. You stand on a gentle rise overlooking an ocean of grass that stretches toward every horizon. The morning sun paints the land in shades of gold and green. A cool breeze moves steadily across the plains, somewhere in the distance. A low rumbling sound rises from the earth itself. At first, it feels like distant thunder. Then you see them. Buffalo. Thousands upon thousands of buffalo. The herd flows across the landscape like a living river. Dust rises behind them. Their dark forms merge into a single moving mass that appears almost endless. The sight is breathtaking. And for the Sioux peoples, it is life itself. By this period, especially among the Lakota, the buffalo has become the foundation of existence across much of the Great Plains. Food, clothing, shelter, tools, trade goods, and spiritual meaning all become connected to these remarkable animals. Nothing is more important. Few things are more respected. You watch as hunters prepare for another expedition. Their movements are calm and deliberate. They understand the responsibility before them. A successful hunt provides nourishment for many families. Failure carries consequences. Every step matters. The relationship between people and buffalo extends far beyond simple survival. The animals are not viewed merely as resources waiting to be consumed. They occupy an important place within a broader understanding of balance, gratitude, and responsibility. The lesson is taught early. Take what is needed. Waste nothing. Show respect. As the hunt begins, riders move carefully across the prairie. Horses have transformed mobility, but success still depends upon knowledge passed through generations. Hunters understand animal behavior. They know how herds react to movement, weather, and terrain. Experience guides every decision. The buffalo know this land too. The pursuit requires patience. You feel the ground trembling beneath the moving animals. Dust fills the air. Wind carries the scent of grass and earth. The scale of the scene feels almost impossible to comprehend. Then the work begins. When the hunt succeeds, activity spreads quickly throughout camp. Men, women, and older children participate in processing the animals. Everyone has responsibilities. Nothing is ignored. Nothing is discarded carelessly. Meat provides food. Hides become clothing and shelter coverings. Bones become tools. Sinew becomes cordage. Even seemingly small parts serve important purposes. The efficiency is remarkable. Modern researchers studying plains cultures often emphasize how thoroughly buffalo supported daily life. Historical and archaeological evidence examined by scholars from institutions including Harvard University and the University of Chicago demonstrates the extraordinary range of uses derived from a single animal. The buffalo supports entire economies, entire communities, entire ways of life. You walk through camp as families work together after a successful hunt. Fresh hides are stretched carefully. Meat dries in the sun. Skilled hands move with confidence developed through years of practice. Children observe closely. One day they will perform these same tasks. Knowledge passes forward. Always forward. The smell of drying meat drifts through warm afternoon air. Nearby, elders supervise younger workers while offering advice and corrections. The atmosphere feels productive, yet deeply communal. No individual could process such abundance alone. Cooperation remains essential. Success belongs to the entire community, not merely those who participated directly in the hunt. As evening approaches, food is shared among families. Laughter returns. Stories circulate around cooking fires. Hunger is replaced by satisfaction. The emotional transition feels powerful. Relief follows effort. Comfort follows uncertainty. You sit beside a family enjoying a meal together. The fire crackles softly. Children listen as older relatives recount previous hunts and memorable journeys across the plains. The stories are practical, but also meaningful. Through them, younger generations learn not only techniques but values. Respect for the buffalo becomes inseparable from respect for life itself. Outside the circle of firelight, vast herds continue moving beneath the stars. Their presence shapes everything. The annual rhythm of life increasingly follows buffalo movements. Camps relocate according to seasonal opportunities. Travel routes reflect animal patterns. Economic decisions often depend upon hunting conditions. The buffalo become a calendar, a guide, a foundation. Historians continued discussing the exact pace at which buffalo-centered lifeways developed among different plains peoples. Some scholars suggest rapid adaptation following the spread of horses. Others argue that the process unfolded more gradually through generations of environmental learning and cultural adjustment. The debate remains active. The importance of buffalo does not. That reality is clear. One cold morning, you accompany a family leaving camp to gather additional resources. Frost covers the grass. Breath hangs visibly in the air. The buffalo herd remains nearby, dark against the pale horizon. The sight brings reassurance. As long as the animals remain abundant, life feels secure. The connection runs deep. Many ceremonies and spiritual traditions reflect this relationship. Gratitude accompanies success. Respect accompanies use. The buffalo provide materially. But they also influence how people understand their place within the larger world. Nothing exists entirely alone. People depend upon animals. Animals depend upon the land. The land depends upon balance. The lesson appears repeatedly throughout Sioux culture. You begin noticing how buffalo imagery appears in conversations, stories, and daily observations. Their importance extends beyond economics into identity itself. The plains and the buffalo become linked together. So do the Sioux and the plains. The relationship feels almost inseparable. As years pass, prosperity grows in many communities. Large horse herds increase mobility. Buffalo provide abundance. Trade networks remain active. Population expands across portions of the Great Plains. The world appears strong, confident, enduring. Yet history rarely allows uncertainty balance to remain unchanged forever. Far to the east, American settlements continue spreading westward. Traders travel farther into indigenous territories. Government officials increasingly pay attention to lands once considered distant and unfamiliar. For now, those developments seem remote. The buffalo still dominate the horizon. The prairie still feels limitless. The Sioux world still flourishes. You spend one final evening watching a herd move beneath the fading light of sunset. Their silhouettes stretch across the grasslands like shadows from another age. The scene feels eternal, but it is not. Changes are already approaching. The buffalo world stands near its greatest strength. Soon it will face pressures unlike any before, and the leaders who guide Sioux communities through those uncertain years will become as important as the herds themselves. The buffalo continue moving across the plains. Their dark shapes drift through morning mist while sunlight slowly brightens the horizon. Camps awaken one by one. Fires are rekindled. Horses graze nearby. Children emerge from lodges still wrapped in blankets against the cool air. Life feels prosperous, confident, well-ordered. Yet no society thrives through abundance alone. Communities require leadership. They require responsibility. They require people willing to place collective well-being above personal ambition. Among the Sioux peoples, leadership develops through reputation, wisdom, generosity, courage, and trust. Authority is rarely based upon simple inheritance or rigid command. A respected leader earns influence because others choose to follow. The distinction matters very much. You walk through camp beside an elder whose opinion carries great weight. People greet him warmly. They listen when he speaks. Yet he does not behave like a ruler issuing commands. Instead, he advises, he says, he persuades, he guides. The strength of leadership rests upon respect, not fear. This approach reflects the broader values of Sioux society. Communities depend upon cooperation. Leaders must build consensus whenever possible. A person known for selfishness or poor judgment struggles to maintain influence regardless of personal bravery. Character matters, reputation matters, action matter most of all. As the morning progresses, a council gathers to discuss upcoming plans. Hunters, respected elders, and other influential individuals sit together beneath the open sky. The conversation unfolds carefully. No one rushes. Important decisions deserve patience. You listen as they discuss travel routes, hunting opportunities, and relationships with neighboring groups. Every topic affects the wider community. Leadership requires listening, perhaps even more than speaking. The lesson appears repeatedly. Some men earn recognition through military achievements. Others become respected because of wisdom, diplomacy, or generosity. Different talents serve different needs. A strong community benefits from many kinds of leaders, not just one. The plains can be unpredictable. Weather changes suddenly, resources shift, relationships between communities evolve. Effective leadership helps people adapt without losing their sense of unity. The challenge never disappears. It simply changes form as afternoon sunlight warms the prairie. You observe another important institution within Sioux society. Military societies play a significant role in maintaining order, organizing hunts, and preparing for defense when necessary. The name can sound intimidating. The reality is more complex. These organizations often perform practical functions extending beyond warfare. Members help coordinate communal activities. They enforce certain rules during hunts. They contribute to social stability. Responsibility accompanies honor, always. You watch a group of respected warriors preparing for a communal buffalo hunt. Their behavior is disciplined. Younger members observe carefully, learning expectations through example rather than lengthy instruction. The lesson is clear. Courage alone is not enough. Discipline matters too. The romantic image of his warriors often focuses entirely on combat, yet daily responsibilities occupy far more time than battles ever do. Successful communities require organization, cooperation, and mutual trust. The dramatic moments make history books. The ordinary work sustains societies. As evening approaches, you sit beside a fire listening to stories about respected leaders from previous generations. The tales emphasize qualities that might surprise modern listeners. Generosity appears often. Patience appears often. Wisdom appears often. Physical bravery remains important, but it rarely stands alone. A warrior who cannot think, a leader who cannot listen, a hunter who cannot share. Such people struggle to earn lasting respect. The values remain interconnected. Historical research from institutions including Princeton University and Yale University has highlighted the complex leadership structures present within many plains societies. Historians increasingly emphasize that effective leadership often depended upon persuasion, personal reputation, and community trust rather than centralized authority. The evidence challenges older stereotypes. The reality was sophisticated and deeply human, yet scholars continue debating certain aspects of political organization among different Sioux communities. Some historians emphasize local autonomy and flexible leadership arrangements. Others place greater focus on influential individuals who shaped regional developments during critical periods. The discussion continues. Both perspectives contain valuable insights. The stars begin appearing overhead. The air cools noticeably. Horse breath becomes visible near camp as animals settle for the night. You notice a young man sitting quietly beside an elder. The younger listener asks questions about leadership, responsibility, and adulthood. The elder answers slowly, thoughtfully. Every generation must prepare the next. Knowledge cannot remain stationary. The conversation drifts toward courage. The elder explains that true courage involves more than facing danger. It also means accepting responsibility, protecting others, and making difficult decisions when necessary. The lesson feels timeless, applicable far beyond the plains. You reflect on how communities preserve themselves across centuries. Strong leaders matter, yet strong communities matter even more. One supports the other. Neither can flourish alone. The Sioux peoples understand this balance well. Across the plains, different bands and communities maintain their own respected leaders while remaining connected through broader cultural traditions. Relationships stretch across considerable distances. Cooperation often proves more valuable than competition, especially during uncertain times, and uncertain times are approaching, far beyond the prairie. The United States continues expanding westward. Traders, explorers, and government representatives are appearing more frequently across regions once considered remote. For now, the pressure remains limited. The buffalo still dominate the landscape. The camps still prosper. The rhythms of plains life continue. Yet careful observers already notice subtle changes. More travelers arrive. More information circulates. More decisions require attention. Leadership will soon become even more important. You spend one final evening beside a council fire. Flames flicker against the darkness while respected voices discuss the future. The conversation remains calm, but a sense of awareness runs beneath it. The world is changing. Everyone knows it. No one yet knows how much. The leaders guiding Sioux communities cannot see every challenge ahead. They cannot predict every conflict or opportunity. What they can do is prepare. Prepare through wisdom. Prepare through unity. Prepare through the values that have sustained their people for generations. The buffalo still roam beneath the stars. The prairie still feels endless. Yet beyond the horizon, another frontier is advancing. And soon the Sioux world will begin colliding with a growing nation determined to move westward. The prairie still appears endless. Morning sunlight spreads across rolling grasslands. Buffalo herds move in the distance. Horses graze peacefully near camp. The familiar rhythms of Sioux life continue much as they have for generations. Yet something new is appearing along the edges of this world. At first, the changes seem small. A few traders, a few travelers, a few distant reports. Then the numbers begin growing. The United States is expanding westward. What once felt remote now feels closer every year. You travel beside a group of Lakota riders crossing open country. Along the route, they encounter signs of increasing outside presence. Wagon tracks mark the earth. Trading posts appear in regions where none existed before. Stories circulate about settlements spreading farther into indigenous territories. The changes are gradual, but impossible to ignore. For generations, Plains peoples have adapted to shifting circumstances. They have responded to environmental change, migration, trade opportunities, and political challenges. Yet the arrival of an expanding industrial nation presents something different. The scale is unprecedented. The pressure continues increasing. One afternoon, you approach a busy trading post standing beside a river. The atmosphere feels crowded and energetic. Indigenous traders, American merchants, interpreters, and travelers move through the area carrying goods and information. Voices overlap. Languages mix. The air smells of horses, wood smoke and river mud. Trade creates opportunities. It also creates dependence. Metal tools, firearms, ammunition, cloth, and other manufactured goods become increasingly common throughout the portions of the plains. Many items provide clear advantages. Communities incorporate them into daily life where useful. Yet every new connection carries consequences. The balance grows more complicated. You observe experienced Lakota leaders negotiating carefully with traders. They understand that commerce can strengthen communities. They also recognize the risks of relying too heavily upon outside sources. Wisdom requires caution, especially during periods of rapid change. As the years pass, American interest in Western territories continues growing. Explorers map regions previously unfamiliar to Eastern audiences. Government officials gather information. Military leaders study routes and resources. The plains attract attention. More attention every year. You sit beside a campfire listening to travelers discuss recent developments. Reports describe increasing migration, expanding settlements, and new roads reaching farther west. Some listeners remain skeptical. Others appear concerned. Most understand that something important is happening. The future feels uncertain. One of the most significant developments involves transportation. Trails crossing the plains carry growing numbers of travelers moving toward distant destinations. Some seek opportunity, others seek land. Many know little about the indigenous nations whose territories they are crossing. The encounters vary greatly. Some remain peaceful, others create tension. You watch a wagon train moving slowly across open country. Families walk beside heavily loaded wagons. Children ride where they can. Dust follows them across the prairie. The sight evokes mixed emotions. Curiosity, concern, uncertainty. For the travelers, the journey represents hope and opportunity. For Sioux communities, it raises difficult questions about territory, resources, and the future. Both perspectives exist simultaneously. History often works this way. As more outsiders arrive, misunderstandings become increasingly common. Different cultures hold different assumptions about land ownership, political authority, and resource use. Communication proves difficult, even when intentions are good. A promise understood one way by one group may be understood differently by another. Small disagreements can grow into larger conflicts when expectations do not align. The challenge affects everyone involved. Historical research from institutions including Harvard University and Columbia University has emphasized the complexity of these frontier interactions. Historians increasingly argue that many conflicts emerge not only from competition over resources, but also from profound cultural misunderstandings. The evidence reveals layers of complexity. Simple explanations rarely suffice, yet the broader pattern becomes clear. Pressure is building. One evening, a gathering of respected leaders discusses the changing situation. Firelight flickers across thoughtful faces. The mood is serious but not fearful. These men have guided their communities through uncertainty before. They understand the importance of patience. They also understand the importance of vigilance. You listen as they discuss increasing American activity throughout the region. Reports arrive from distant bands. Travelers bring new information. Every piece helps form a larger picture. The world beyond the plains is moving closer, much closer. The conversation eventually turns toward buffalo. The topic feels unavoidable. The animals remain abundant in many areas. But increased travel and expanding commercial interests are beginning to affect portions of the plains ecosystem. The changes remain limited for now. Still, attentive observers notice them. The connection between buffalo and Sioux life is so profound that any threat to the herds carries enormous implications. Everyone understands this. No explanation is necessary. Historians continue debating the extent to which different Sioux leaders anticipated future developments during these years. Some scholars argue that many recognize the long-term challenges posed by American expansion. Others suggest that the speed and scale of coming changes exceeded what anyone could reasonably predict. The debate remains active. The uncertainty was real. You spend another day traveling across the prairie. The landscape remains beautiful beyond description. Wind moves through tall grass, hawks circle overhead, distant buffalo darken the horizon. At moments, everything appears unchanged, timeless, permanent. Then you encounter another wagon track, another trade. Another expansion. The illusion fades. History is moving, faster now. As darkness settles over camp, you sit quietly watching sparks rise into a sky crowded with stars. Around you, families continue living their lives, meals are shared, stories are told, children laugh before drifting to sleep. The humanity of the scene feels powerful. These people are not symbols. Symbols. They are families, communities, individuals trying to protect the world they know. The leaders gathered around nearby fires understand that difficult decisions lie ahead. Cooperation may sometimes be necessary. Resistance may sometimes be necessary. Neither path appears simple. The frontier is changing. The Sioux world is changing with it. Soon treaties will be proposed, promises will be made, expectations will collide, and the tensions now quietly spreading across the plains will begin shaping the future of an entire people. The prairie remains beautiful. Yet beneath that beauty, tension is steadily growing. You wake before sunrise and step into cool morning air. A pale band of light stretches across the eastern horizon. Horses stand quietly near camp. The grass glistens with dew. For a few peaceful moments, the world feels unchanged. Then conversation begins. Reports arrive. Messengers travel between communities. The same concerns appear again and again. More travelers, more soldiers, more government officials, more pressure on the land. The expanding United States increasingly seeks formal agreements with indigenous nations throughout the plains. Government representatives believe treaties can establish order, define territories, and reduce conflict. On paper, the idea appears straightforward. In practice, it rarely proves so simple. You accompany a group of Sioux leaders traveling to a council meeting. The journey takes time along the way. Discussions continue around evening fires and during quiet moments on horseback. Everyone understands the importance of these negotiations. The stakes are enormous. The future may depend upon them. When the gathering finally begins, the atmosphere feels both respectful and cautious. Representatives from different worlds sit facing one another. Interpreters work carefully to bridge language differences. Military officers observe. Traders listen closely. Every word matters. Every promise matters, at least in theory. You watch as leaders discuss territory, travel routes, trade, hunting rights, and peace. Many participants genuinely hope for workable solutions. Most understand that continued conflict would carry serious costs. Yet understanding remains difficult. The two sides often approach the same issue from entirely different perspectives. For many American officials, treaties function as legal documents defining ownership and authority. For many Sioux leaders, relationships, responsibilities, and mutual obligations may carry equal or greater importance than written words alone. The difference creates challenges. Profound challenges. A phrase that seems perfectly clear to one group may hold a different meaning for another. Misunderstandings multiply. Trust becomes fragile. Historical records from treaty councils reveal both sincere efforts at negotiation and deep structural problems. Research conducted by scholars associated with Yale University and Princeton University has emphasized that cultural differences often complicated treaty discussions, even when participants believed they were acting in good faith. Communication occurred. Understanding did not always follow. The consequences could last generations. As the meetings continue, you notice the physical details surrounding them. Dust drifts across open ground. Horses stamp impatiently nearby. Interpreters speak for hours. Faces grow tired beneath the summer sun. Negotiation is exhausting work, especially when the future hangs in the balance. One evening, after a long day of discussions, Sioux leaders gather privately. The mood is thoughtful. No one treats the situation lightly. They ask difficult questions. Can promises be trusted? Will agreements be honored? What happens if circumstances change? No easy answers emerge. The uncertainty feels heavy. You sit quietly listening to the wind moving through camp. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse snorts softly. The sounds feel ordinary. The decisions being discussed are anything but ordinary. Many treaties include guarantees regarding hunting grounds, territorial boundaries, or safe travel. On paper, these arrangements seem capable of preserving peace. Yet realities on the ground often prove more complicated. Population growth continues. Migration continues. Economic interests continue expanding. Pressure rarely disappears simply because an agreement exists. One afternoon, you travel through territory where travelers increasingly cross traditional hunting lands. Wagon tracks cut through the prairie. Camps appear along established routes. The landscape itself begins reflecting larger political changes. The transformation feels gradual, but unmistakable. You meet families who remain hopeful that negotiated agreements can protect their future. You meet others who express growing skepticism. Both reactions seem understandable. Experiencing shapes perspective, and experiences differ. Historians continued debating the intentions of various participants during this era. Some scholars emphasize genuine efforts by certain officials and indigenous leaders to avoid conflict through diplomacy. Others focus on structural inequalities that made lasting fairness difficult to achieve. The discussion remains important because history rarely fits simple moral categories. Good intentions and harmful outcomes can coexist. Promises and disappointments can coexist too. As autumn approaches, buffalo hunts continue across portions of the plains. Communities still follow familiar seasonal rhythms. Children still play. Elders still tell stories. Daily life continues despite growing political uncertainty. The contrast feels striking. Ordinary life persists. Even when history is accelerating, you spend time with a family preparing food for winter. The work requires concentration and patience. A grandmother teaches younger relatives techniques refined through generations. The lesson has nothing to do with the treaties, yet somehow it feels connected. Cultural survival depends upon such moments, not only upon political decisions. The fire crackles softly beside them. Wood smoke drifts into cool air. For a brief moment, the larger conflicts seem far away. Then another messenger arrives. More news, more developments, more questions. The tension continues building. One respected leader observes that peace requires commitment from everyone involved. A treaty cannot succeed if either side ignores its responsibilities. The statement feels obvious. Yet history repeatedly proves how difficult such commitments can be to maintain, especially when competing interests grow stronger over time. Research from Harvard University and other major institutions has highlighted how frontier treaties often reflected unequal political realities. While agreements sometimes temporarily reduced conflict, enforcement frequently proved inconsistent as circumstances changed. The pattern becomes increasingly familiar. Promises are made. Expectation wrong. Difficulties follow. Night settles across the prairie. The stars appear overhead one by one. You sit beside a fire watching sparks rise into darkness. Around you, conversations continue quietly. Leaders consider possibilities. Families think about the future. No one knows exactly what lies ahead, but everyone senses change. The frontier is becoming more crowded. The negotiations are becoming more complicated. The choices are becoming harder. Soon the growing tension between Sioux communities and American expansion will produce leaders whose names echo across history. Among them will be one man whose determination and strategic vision will challenge the United States in ways few expected. His name is Red Cloud, and his time is approaching. The wind carries a different feeling now. The prairie remains vast and beautiful, but the atmosphere has changed. The concerns discussed around council fires are no longer distant possibilities. They are becoming immediate realities. Roads are expanding. Military activity is increasing. American influence is reaching farther into the plains. And among the Sioux, new leaders are stepping forward to confront the challenges of a changing age. One of those leaders is Red Cloud. You first encounter him through stories shared around evening fires. His reputation travels ahead of him. People speak of intelligence, determination, patience, and political skill. They do not describe a reckless warrior. They describe a strategist. That distinction matters very much. As morning sunlight spreads across the grasslands, you travel with a group discussing recent developments along important routes crossing Sioux territory. American officials increasingly seek safe passage through regions vital to indigenous hunting and travel. Military posts begin appearing. Soldiers begin arriving. The situation grows tense. Red Cloud understands what many others understand as well. Control of territory means more than geography. It affects hunting grounds, political independence, and the future of entire communities. The stakes could not be higher. You watch him during a council gathering. He listens carefully. He speaks deliberately. Nothing feels rushed. Strong leadership often looks quieter than people expect. His influence comes not from loud declarations, but from credibility earned through years of experience and trust. Other leaders respect his judgment. Community members pay attention when he speaks. The confidence is noticeable. So is the caution, as the conflict surrounding routes through the northern plains intensifies. Sioux leaders and their allies increasingly oppose military expansion into critical regions. The disagreement centers particularly around territories associated with important hunting grounds. The issue touches everything: economics, security, sovereignty, survival. You travel through country where soldiers are constructing forts along strategic routes. The sight creates mixed emotions. Some see symbols of growing American power. Others see direct threats to established ways of life. The interpretation depends upon perspective. The consequences affect everyone. One afternoon, dark clouds gather over the prairie while discussions continue among indigenous leaders. Thunder rolls across distant hills. The weather seems to mirror the political atmosphere. Tension fills the air, yet the leaders remain focused. They understand the seriousness of the moment. Red Cloud works tirelessly to build cooperation among different groups. Unity is not always easy. Communities possess distinct priorities and experiences, yet shared concerns encourage collaboration. Diplomacy becomes essential. Again and again, before conflict can succeed, agreement must exist. Historians frequently emphasize Red Cloud's remarkable political abilities. Research associated with scholars from Yale University and the University of Chicago has highlighted his effectiveness in building alliances and coordinating resistance during a critical period of Plains history. Military skill mattered. Political skill mattered just as much, perhaps more, as the situation escalates. Confrontations occur with increasing frequency. The details vary. The outcomes vary, yet a broader pattern emerges. Resistance is growing. Determination is growing. Neither side appears willing to abandon its objectives. You spend a cold evening beside a fire listening to conversations among experienced warriors. The mood is serious but controlled. No one romanticizes conflict. Everyone understands its costs. Families will be affected. Communities will be affected. Lives will change. The reality remains unavoidable. Outside the circle of firelight, horses stand quietly in the darkness. Their breath drifts into the cold night air. The scene feels calm. The future does not. As military campaigns continue, Red Cloud's coalition achieves significant successes against American forces operating in contested regions. Knowledge of the land provides advantages. Mobility provides advantages. Strategic coordination provides advantages as well. The conflict proves difficult for the United States, much more difficult than expected. One of the most famous episodes occurs during a confrontation that later becomes known as the Fetterman Fight. American forces suffer a severe defeat after being drawn into a carefully executed engagement. The news spreads quickly, across the plains, across military outposts, across the nation. The victory demonstrates that Sioux and allied warriors possess both determination and capability. It also reinforces Red Cloud's reputation as an effective leader during a period of extraordinary tension. You hear reactions from different camps. Some express pride, some express relief, others wonder what comes next. Victories solve certain problems. They create new questions too. Historians continue debating aspects of military strategy and decision-making during these campaigns. Some scholars emphasize the tactical effectiveness of indigenous leadership. Others focus on mistakes made by American commanders operating in unfamiliar environments. The evidence supports multiple interpretations. What remains clear is the broader outcome. The resistance succeeded, at least for the moment. As months pass, military and political realities begin shifting. The cost of maintaining contested positions grows increasingly difficult to justify. American officials reassess their approach. Negotiations return. The atmosphere remains cautious, yet circumstances have changed. Red Cloud and his allies have demonstrated that they cannot be ignored. One evening, after a long journey, you sit overlooking a prairie glowing beneath sunset light. The grass ripples like water beneath the wind. Buffalo appear as dark shapes in the distance. The land feels peaceful, for now. You reflect on how rare this moment is in frontier history. Indigenous resistance has produced results that few outside observers expected. through leadership, coordination, and determination. Red Cloud's coalition has forced a powerful nation to reconsider its plans. The achievement is extraordinary and widely recognized by historians today. Research from Harvard University and other major institutions frequently identifies Red Cloud's War as one of the most successful examples of indigenous resistance against American military expansion during the 19th century. The significance cannot be ignored, yet even success carries limits. The pressures driving westward expansion have not disappeared. Population growth continues, economic interests continue, political ambitions continue as well. The conflict may be ending. The larger struggle is not. Night settles slowly across the plains. Stars emerge overhead. The wind moves fearfully through the grass. Red Cloud's victory stands as a remarkable achievement. It demonstrates the strength of Sioux leadership and the power of collective action during a critical moment in history. But new challenges are already approaching. The years ahead will test the balance between peace and uncertainty, and the future of the Sioux world remains far from settled. The prairie seems quieter after the years of conflict. The wind still moves across the grasslands. Buffalo still roam many regions. Camps still rise and fall with the seasons. From a distance, life appears familiar, yet beneath the surface, important changes are unfolding. The victory achieved during Red Cloud's resistance has brought a measure of peace. But peace itself proves complicated. The forces pushing westward have not disappeared. They've merely paused, adjusted, and continued moving. History rarely stands still. Not for long, you wake beside a camp positioned near a broad river. Morning fog drifts above the water. Horses graze nearby. Families prepare breakfast while children chase one another through the cool air. The scene feels comforting, ordinary, human. These ordinary moments matter more than many historical accounts acknowledge. Between famous battles and major political events, communities continue living their lives. They marry, raise children, hunt, travel, celebrate, and mourn. Life continues. Even when uncertainty remains, you spend the morning with a family preparing hides. Skilled hands work patiently. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next through demonstration and repetition. The lesson is practical. The lesson is cultural. The two are inseparable. Nearby, an elder explains how techniques learned from grandparents are now being taught to grandchildren. The continuity feels powerful. Traditions survive through use, not memory alone. As the day progresses, conversations increasingly turn toward the future. Peace has reduced immediate military pressure in some regions, but new concerns are emerging. The buffalo remains central to everything, yet changes are becoming visible. More traders arrive. More travelers cross the plains. More hunting occurs. The balance feels less certain than before. You ride across open country with several experienced hunters. They point towards distant herds moving across the horizon. The animals are still abundant, but discussions reveal growing awareness that the world around them is changing. The prairie is vast, but not limitless. The observation carries weight. No one says it lightly. One afternoon, you encounter a trading post busier than any seen a generation earlier. Wagons crowd the area. Goods move constantly. New faces appear almost daily. Economic opportunities are increasing. So are dependencies. Many Sioux communities have successfully incorporated manufactured goods into daily life. Metal tools, firearms, ammunition, cloth, and other products offer undeniable advantages, yet reliance creates vulnerability. A disrupted trade relationship can affect entire communities. Leaders understand this. They discuss it often. The challenge resembles a balancing act. Communities seek the benefits of new technologies while preserving independence and cultural identity. Neither goal is simple. Both matter deeply. As evening approaches, you attend a gathering where respected leaders discuss recent developments. The atmosphere remains thoughtful rather than alarmed. Experience has taught patience. Experience has also taught caution. Different voices offer different perspectives. Some believe accommodation and negotiation provide the best path forward. Others worry that continued concessions will encourage greater demands. The disagreement is genuine. The concerns are reasonable. No clear answer exists. Historians studying this period often emphasize its complexity. Research associated with scholars from Princeton University and Columbia University suggests that many Sioux leaders faced extraordinarily difficult decisions. They were navigating rapid change while attempting to protect communities, traditions, and territories. The situation offered few perfect choices, only difficult ones. You listen as one elder reflects on the nature of leadership. During wartime, certain responsibilities become obvious. During periods of uncertainty, the challenges can feel less visible but equally important. A battle presents a clear danger. A changing world presents many. The observation lingers in your thoughts. As seasons pass, reservation policies begin affecting increasing numbers of indigenous communities throughout the West. The concept represents a profound shift in how the United States intends to manage relationships with native nations. The implications are enormous. Freedom of movement, access to hunting grounds, political independence, all become subjects of negotiation and dispute. You travel through regions where opinions differ sharply. Some individuals see potential advantages in certain arrangements. Others view them as unacceptable limitations. Most people recognize the risks. The future feels uncertain. One cold evening, you sit inside a lodge while wind rattles the exterior coverings. The fire burns warmly at the center. Families gather close together. The atmosphere feels intimate, protected. Outside, darkness covers the plains. Inside, stories continue. A grandfather recounts experiences from earlier decades. He describes buffalo hunts, long journeys, council meetings, and changing times. Younger listeners absorb every detail. The past remains alive because someone remembers. Because someone listens. The emotional transition feels subtle but important. The older generation remembers a world that seemed endless. The younger generation is growing up in one that feels increasingly constrained. Neither perspective is entirely wrong. Both contain truth. Historians continue debating the degree to which different Sioux communities anticipated future developments. Some scholars argue that many leaders clearly recognized the long-term dangers facing buffalo-based economies and political autonomy. Others suggest that the speed of coming changes exceeded even the most cautious expectations. The evidence supports elements of both views. Predicting the future is difficult. Living through it is harder. As another year passes, the plains remain beautiful beyond description. Sunsets paint the horizon with brilliant colors. Thunderstorms roll dramatically across open country. Buffalo still move through many regions. Yet signs of transformation appear everywhere. More roads, more settlements, more pressure. You notice it in conversations around campfires. People speak increasingly about political developments, government policies, and shifting realities beyond traditional territories. The topics once seemed distant. Now they feel immediate. One final evening, you sit atop a gentle hill watching twilight settle across the prairie. The wind carries the scent of grass and distant rain. Horses graze quietly below. The scene feels peaceful, almost timeless. Yet history is moving again. The balance between peace and conflict is becoming increasingly fragile. Decisions made far away are beginning to affect daily life across the plains. The future remains uncertain. But one issue is rapidly rising above all others: the land, the buffalo, and the question of who will control them. Soon those tensions will draw the Sioux toward one of the most famous confrontations in American history. The road to Little Bighorn has already begun. The years move forward with increasing speed. What once felt like distant concerns now dominate conversations throughout the plains. The balance that leaders struggle to preserve is becoming harder to maintain. Pressures continue building from every direction. More settlers arrive. More railroads advance. More officials make decisions affecting lands they barely know. And at the center of it all lies a question that no one can avoid. Who controls the future of the plains? You wake beside a camp nestled near a river valley. The morning is cool. Mist hangs low above the water. Horses stand quietly among patches of grass damp with dew. The scene appears peaceful, yet tension travels everywhere now. Even the quiet feels different. As you move through camp, discussions repeatedly return to the same concerns. Buffalo hunting grounds face increasing pressure. American expansion continues. Government policies become more aggressive. The situation grows more complicated every season. Among the most important regions is the Black Hills. To the Sioux, these lands hold deep cultural, spiritual, and historical significance. They are far more than territory on a map. They are part of identity itself, part of memory, part of belonging. You travel with a group approaching these hills. The landscape rises gradually from the surrounding prairie. Pine-covered slopes create a striking contrast with the open grasslands beyond. The air feels different here. Cooler, still. Many people regard the area with profound respect. Stories, ceremonies, and traditions connect generations to these lands. The relationship runs deep, far deeper than outsiders often understand. Then new developments begin reshaping everything. Reports spread rapidly across the plain. Gold has been discovered in the Black Hills. The news travels like wildfire, almost overnight. Prospectors, miners, entrepreneurs, and fortune seekers begin moving toward the region despite existing agreements intended to protect Sioux territory. The consequences become immediate and enormous. You stand overlooking a trail crowded with travelers. Wagons creak across rough ground. Horses pull heavy loads. Dust hangs in the air. The flow seems endless. Each new arrival represents opportunity for some people. For Sioux communities, many represent something else. Encroachment, violation, threat. The emotional atmosphere shifts noticeably. Frustration grows, distrust grows. Patience begins wearing thin. Leaders face impossible choices. Negotiate further. Resist. Adapt. No option appears satisfactory. Historical records show that the discovery of gold in the Black Hills dramatically increased tensions between the United States and Sioux communities. Research discussed by scholars from Harvard University and Yale University consistently identifies this development as a major turning point leading toward renewed conflict. Economic interests prove powerful, perhaps unstoppable, at least from the perspective of many policymakers. You sit beside a council fire where respected leaders debate the situation. Faces glow in the flickering light, voices remain calm, but concern is unmistakable. Promises have been made before. Now those promises seem increasingly fragile. The question hanging over every conversation remains the same. What happens when agreements are ignored? No easy answer emerges. Among the influential figures during this period are leaders whose names will become famous throughout American history. Men such as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse command growing respect because of their leadership, courage, and commitment to protecting their people. You hear their names spoken often, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with concern, always with attention. These leaders understand that events are accelerating. The pace of change leaves little room for delay. The buffalo economy still supports many communities, yet even that foundation feels less secure than before. Expanding settlement, commercial hunting, and increasing traffic across the plains create mounting pressures. The old world remains alive, but it feels vulnerable. You spend time with a family preparing food for winter. The tasks are familiar, the techniques are familiar, the rhythms of daily life continue. Yet conversations repeatedly drift toward uncertainty. The contrast feels ordinary work, extraordinary times. A grandmother carefully teaches a young girl how to prepare hides. The lesson is practical. It is also an act of cultural preservation. Knowledge must continue, no matter what happens. The responsibility feels urgent now, as government pressure increases. Many Sioux groups face difficult decisions regarding reservations and federal demands. Some choose accommodation, others choose continued resistance. Many find themselves caught between competing realities. The divisions are not simple. Families disagree, communities disagree, leaders disagree. Historians continue debating the extent to which conflict remained avoidable during these years. Some scholars argue that alternative policies might have reduced tensions. Others suggest that competing goals have become fundamentally incompatible. The debate remains active. The crisis was real. One evening, thunderclouds gather over the plains. Lightning flashes across distant hills. Wind sweeps through camp carrying the scent of rain. The weather feels symbolic. The atmosphere feels charged. You sit beside a fire listening to discussions about the future. The voices are thoughtful rather than dramatic. Everyone understands the seriousness of the situation. The question is no longer whether change is coming. Change has already arrived. The question is how people will respond. Sitting Bull continues advocating resistance to policies he believes threaten Sioux independence. Crazy Horse earns admiration for military skill and personal integrity. Other leaders pursue different strategies. Each believes he is protecting his people. Each faces immense pressure. The road ahead grows narrower. As months pass, military activity increases. American authorities seek greater control over the region. Deadlines are issued. Demands are made. Resistance hardens. The possibility of large-scale conflict becomes increasingly difficult to avoid. You ride across open prairie beneath a sky filled with migrating birds. The landscape remains breathtakingly beautiful. Buffalo still graze in the distance. The wind still carries familiar scents of grass and earth. Yet beneath that beauty lies anticipation. History is approaching a crossroads. Soon armies will move. Warriors will gather. Decisions made over many years will converge into a single dramatic confrontation. The plains are preparing for one of the most famous battles in North American history. The name Little Bighorn is not yet spoken with legendary weight, but the path leading there is now impossible to miss. The summer air feels heavy with expectation. Across the northern plains, events that have been building for years are finally converging. Treaties have been debated, promises have been broken, gold seekers have entered protected lands, military pressure has increased. Now armies are moving, and so are the Sioux. You wake before dawn in a sprawling encampment unlike anything you have seen before. The camp stretches across the landscape beside a winding river. Smoke rises from hundreds of fires. Horses graze in a row in every direction. Families prepare meals while warriors move quietly among the lodges. The scale is astonishing. The energy is unmistakable. People from different bands and allied nations have gathered together in extraordinary numbers. The reasons are complex, but the purpose is clear. They intend to remain free. The morning sunlight gradually reveals the full size of the settlement. Children play near the riverbanks. Women prepare food and care for families. Elders sit in conversation. Life continues, even on the edge of history. You walk through the camp and notice how ordinary many moments appear. Someone repairs equipment, someone tells a story, someone comforts a tired child. The humanity feels important, because famous battles are often remembered through maps and statistics, not through the people living them. Among the leaders present are figures whose names will echo through generations. Sitting Bull provides spiritual and political leadership. Crazy Horse commands enormous respect for his courage and military skill. Their influence is visible. Their responsibility is immense. Neither man can know exactly what will happen next. No one can. Yet everyone senses that a major confrontation is approaching. As the day progresses, scouts bring information. American military forces are operating nearby. Reports circulate rapidly through the camp. Attention sharpens. Conversation becomes quieter. Preparation begins. The atmosphere changes. You notice horses being checked carefully. Weapons are inspected. Experienced warriors discuss possibilities. The mood is serious but controlled. There is no celebration, no recklessness, only focus. Historical evidence indicates that the village along the Little Bighorn River was one of the largest indigenous encampments assembled on the northern plains during that era. Research from institutions including Stanford University and the University of Chicago has emphasized the extraordinary size and diversity of the gathering. Its scale surprised American commanders, perhaps profoundly. As afternoon light brightens the valley, Another important moment unfolds. Sitting Bull participates in spiritual ceremonies that many participants view as deeply meaningful. The details vary depending upon the account. The significance does not. Many people believe they are living through a turning point. The emotional weight is enormous. You sit quietly near the river as evening approaches. Water flows steadily past. Cottonwood leaves rustle in the breeze. Children laugh somewhere beyond the nearest lodges. The contrast feels remarkable. Peace and tension existing together. The next morning, events begin moving rapidly. Scouts report approaching soldiers. The information spreads through camp. Warriors prepare. Families react. The moment everyone anticipated has arrived. The military force approaching is commanded by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, one of the most famous officers in the United States Army. His reputation is considerable. His confidence is considerable too, yet the information available to him is incomplete. Like many historical figures, he must make decisions without fully understanding the situation before him. You follow the growing movement throughout camp. Riders begin gathering. Messages pass quickly from group to group. Dust rises beneath hundreds of hooves. The valley comes alive. Everything feels urgent, yet surprisingly organized. The battle that follows becomes one of the most studied military engagements in American history. Exact details remain subjects of scholarly discussion even today. Participants experienced events from different perspectives. Accounts sometimes conflict. Historians continue examining evidence. The debate remains active. What remains clear is the outcome. The Sioux and their allies achieve a stunning victory. As fighting spreads across the landscape and indigenous warriors respond with speed, coordination, and determination, familiarity with the terrain provides advantages. Numbers provide advantages. Leadership provides advantages as well. The pressure on American forces becomes overwhelming. You imagine the confusion of the moment. Dust fills the air. Horses race across uneven ground. Gunfire echoes through the valley. Commands compete with noise and movement. Within a relatively short period, the battle reaches its conclusion. The results shock the United States. News spreads rapidly across the nation. People struggle to comprehend what has happened. One of America's most famous military officers has been defeated. His command has been destroyed. The event immediately enters public memory. The name Little Bighorn becomes legendary. Yet from within the Sioux camp, emotions are more complicated. There is satisfaction. There is relief. There is grief too. Victories still carry costs. Families have lost loved ones. Communities have experienced trauma. War rarely offers uncomplicated triumph. As evening settles over the valley, fires burn throughout the camp. Conversations continue long into the night. People reflect on what has occurred. Some feel hopeful. Others remain cautious. Many understand an important reality. The victory is remarkable, but it may not end the struggle. Historians from Harvard University, Yale University, and other major institutions frequently emphasize this point. Little Bighorn represented an extraordinary military success, but it did not eliminate the broader forces driving American expansion. Those forces remain powerful, persistent. You sit beside the river one final time as darkness spreads across the landscape. The water moves quietly beneath the stars. The camp remains active behind you. For a brief moment, the Sioux world stands at the height of its military achievement. The victory will be remembered for generations. Stories will be told. Legends will grow. The names of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse will become famous far beyond the plains. Yet history rarely stops at a single moment. The triumph at Little Bighorn marks not an ending, but a turning point. Because the response from the United States is already beginning, and the years that follow will test the Sioux people more severely than ever before. The victory at Little Bighorn echoes across the continent. News travels rapidly through cities, military posts, settlements, and frontier communities. Newspapers print dramatic headlines, politicians debate responses, military leaders reassess their strategies. For many Americans, the defeat comes as a shock. For the Sioux and their allies, it represents a remarkable achievement. Yet beneath the celebrations and reactions, a difficult truth is already emerging. The war is not over. Not even close. Close. You wake beside a camp moving across the northern plains. The atmosphere feels different from the weeks immediately following Little Bighorn. Pride remains. Relief remains. But uncertainty remains too. Experienced leaders understand history. They understand power. They understand that a great victory can provoke an even greater response. The morning air feels cool and dry. Horses graze nearby. Families continue ordinary routines despite extraordinary circumstances. Breakfast must still be prepared. Children must still be cared for. Life continues, even after famous battles. You watch riders arrive carrying new reports. American military activity is increasing. More troops are entering the region. More resources are being committed to the conflict. The response is serious and growing stronger. Across the plains, government officials and military commanders become determined to prevent another defeat like Little Bighorn. Public pressure encourages action. Political pressure encourages action. The momentum feels relentless. You travel with a group moving through familiar territory. The landscape remains magnificent. Grasslands stretch beneath enormous skies. Rivers cut through valleys rich with life. The beauty remains unchanged. The circumstances do not. The military campaigns that follow become increasingly difficult for Sioux communities. American forces expand operations across broad regions. Supply networks improve. Pressure is applied continuously rather than through isolated expeditions. The strategy evolves. Persistence becomes the weapon. You notice how the conflict affects daily life. Families must move frequently. Food becomes harder to secure in some areas. Uncertainty accompanies every decision. The strain accumulates, slowly, then rapidly. One evening, you sit beside a fire listening to conversations among community members. The mood is thoughtful rather than dramatic. People discuss practical concerns. Winter, food supplies, safety, the future. The topics reveal a simple reality. Long wars are not sustained by battles alone. They are sustained by logistics, resources, and endurance. The challenge grows heavier with each passing month. Among the most respected leaders during this period remains Crazy Horse. His reputation continues expanding because of courage, tactical skill, and personal commitment. You observe him from a distance during a gathering. His presence commands attention, yet there is little sign of arrogance. The burden of leadership appears heavy and constant. Historical accounts frequently describe Crazy Horse as a figure who inspired deep loyalty among many followers. Research discussed by scholars at institutions including Yale University and Stanford University often highlights his effectiveness during a period of intense military pressure. His influence is substantial. His circumstances are increasingly difficult. At the same time, Sitting Bull faces his own challenges. His leadership remains important, but the broader situation continues changing. Communities are being forced to make difficult decisions under growing pressure. Some choose continued resistance, others seek alternatives, others remain so uncertain. The diversity of responses reflects the complexity of the moment. There is no single Sioux experience. There are many. As autumn approaches, buffalo herds become even more important. Food security affects every decision. The relationship between survival and the buffalo remains inseparable. Yet troubling signs are appearing. Commercial hunting is increasing. Pressure on the herds is increasing. The old balance feels fragile. You ride across open country with several hunters. The wind carries the scent of dry grass. Hawks circle high above the prairie. The landscape remains vast, yet somehow it feels smaller. The sense of unlimited freedom that characterized earlier generations is becoming harder to maintain. Military patrols appear more frequently. Settlements expand. Trails multiply. History is closing in. One cold evening, frost forms along the edges of a riverbank. Breath hangs visibly in the air. families gather close around fires while preparing for winter. The atmosphere feels intimate, almost protective. Inside one lodge, an elder speaks quietly about change. Younger listeners pay careful attention. The message is simple. Survival requires adaptation. It always has. The Sioux people adapted to forests, rivers, grasslands, horses, and countless other transformations. The question now is whether adaptation can succeed against forces of such scale and persistence. No one knows. Not yet. Historians continue debating the extent to which alternative outcomes remained possible during these years. Some scholars emphasize the overwhelming demographic and industrial advantages possessed by the United States. Others focus on specific decisions, policies, and missed opportunities that may have influenced events. The debate remains important. The pressures facing Indigenous communities remain undeniable. As winter deepens, the hardships increase, movement becomes more difficult, resources become more limited. The emotional strain grows heavier. Victories from earlier years begin feeling distant. Memory remains. Reality intrudes. You sit beside a fire one night listening to the wind outside. Snow drifts across the prairie. The sound against lodge coverings creates a soft, steady rhythm. Inside, people remain together, sharing warmth, sharing stories, sharing uncertainty. The scene feels profoundly human. No matter how large historical events become, they ultimately affect individual lives. Parents worry about children, elders worry about traditions, communities worry about survival. These concerns are universal, across centuries, across cultures. As the months pass, increasing numbers of Sioux people face difficult choices regarding reservations, continued resistance, or migration. Some groups move northward, others seek accommodation, others continue fighting. The paths diverge, the pressures remain. One final evening, you stand beneath a sky filled with stars. The prairie stretches around you in every direction. The beauty feels eternal, yet you know change is accelerating. The great victory at Little Bighorn remains part of history now. What comes next is something different. The struggle is shifting from military confrontation toward questions of survival, adaptation, and endurance. And among the most painful chapters still ahead lies a tragedy that will come to symbolize the end of an era. The place is called Wounded Knee. Its shadow is drawing closer. The years after the great conflicts feel strangely quiet. Not peaceful, not entirely, but quieter than before. The thunder of large battles fades from the plains. The dramatic confrontations that once captured national attention become less frequent. Yet for the Sioux people, some of the most difficult challenges are only beginning. You wake on a cold morning beneath a pale winter sky. The wind moves softly across open ground. Frost clings to the earth. Smoke rises from scattered homes as families begin another day. The landscape looks familiar. Life does not. Increasing numbers of Sioux families now find themselves living on reservations. The transition represents far more than a change of location. It affects movement, economics, social structures, and daily routines that are developed over generations. The adjustment is profound to show and often painful. For centuries, mobility formed a central part of plains life. Communities followed seasonal rhythms tied to buffalo herds, weather conditions, and traditional patterns of movement. Now those rhythms are changing rapidly. You walk beside a man who remembers earlier decades vividly. His face carries the marks of age and experience. As he looks across the land, you sense both memory and loss. He remembers larger buffalo herds, longer journeys, greater freedom of movement. The memories remain clear. The world around him has changed. As the day progresses, you observe daily life on the reservation. Families continue working hard, children continue learning, elders continue teaching. Community remains alive. Despite everything, the resilience feels remarkable. People adapt because they must. Gardens are planted. New forms of labor emerge. Relationships with government agencies become increasingly important, whether people welcome them or not. The transition creates tension. Dependence creates tension too. Many communities face shortages of food, supplies, and resources. Promises made by federal authorities are not always fulfilled consistently. Bureaucratic delays create hardship. The consequences are immediate. Families feel them directly. You sit with a mother preparing a simple meal for her children. The food is modest, the work is careful, every resource matters. The scene feels intimate and revealing. Large historical transformations often become visible through small household details. What people eat, how they live, what they worry about. These realities tell important stories. Research from institutions including Harvard University and the University of Chicago has highlighted the enormous social and economic disruptions experienced by many indigenous communities during the reservation era. Historians emphasize that adaptation required extraordinary resilience under difficult conditions. The challenges were real. The endurance was real too, as afternoon sunlight filters through thin clouds. You spend time with children attending a school established under new policies promoted by federal authorities. Education becomes a major focus of government efforts. So does assimilation. Officials increasingly seek to reshape indigenous identities according to American cultural expectations. The goal extends beyond practical instruction. It reaches into language, customs, traditions, family life. The implications are profound. You notice the concern in the conversations among elders. They understand that cultural survival depends upon more than physical survival. Memory matters, language matters, stories matter. Without them, something essential could be lost. One evening, a grandfather gathers younger relatives around a fire. Outside, cold winds sweep across the reservation. Inside, warmth fills the room. The elder begins telling stories, familiar stories, important stories. The children listen carefully. The act feels simple. It is also an act of preservation. Across reservations throughout the West, countless similar moments occur. Families work quietly to maintain traditions despite growing pressure to abandon them. The effort rarely appears in military reports or government documents, yet it shapes the future. Historians continue debating aspects of reservation policy and its long-term effects. Some scholars emphasize the diversity of experiences among different communities. Others focus on common patterns of disruption and adaptation. The evidence reveals a complexity. The hardship remains undeniable. Meanwhile, another transformation is unfolding folding across the plains. The buffalo are disappearing. The change feels almost unimaginable. Only a few decades earlier, enormous herds covered vast portions of North America. Now their numbers collapse dramatically due to commercial hunting, habitat changes, and expanding settlement. The impact is devastating, economically, culturally, emotionally. You stand beside an elder overlooking open grassland where buffalo once appeared in staggering numbers. The horizon seems strangely empty. The absence feels heavy, almost physical, for many Sioux people. The decline of the buffalo represents more than the loss of a resource. It symbolizes the end of an entire way of life. A world is vanishing before their eyes. As winter deepens, communities continue adapting. Some individuals find work in new economic systems, others focus in agriculture. Others pursue different strategies entirely. There is no single response, only many responses, each shaped by circumstance, each shaped by necessity. You spend a quiet evening listening to conversations among community members. The mood shifts between concern and determination. People speak about children, about the future, about survival. The discussion reveals something important. Hope remains, even during difficult times. Perhaps especially during difficult times. The Sioux people have endured immense change already. They have adapted to new environments, new technologies, new political realities, and new challenges. The process continues. Action after another. As darkness settles across the reservation, stars emerge overhead. The sky remains as beautiful as ever. The wind still moves across the plains. Some things endure, even when much else changes. You sit quietly reflecting on the remarkable resilience surrounding you. Families continue caring for one another. Elders continue teaching. Traditions continue surviving in homes. Stories, ceremonies, and memories. The struggle is not over, yet neither is the culture, neither is the people. Still, another difficult chapter approaches. Tensions remain high. Economic hardship remains widespread. Spiritual movements are emerging across indigenous communities seeking hope during uncertain times. Soon, fear and misunderstanding will combine with those tensions, and at a place called Wounded Knee, tragedy will mark the end of one age and the beginning of another. The winter winds feel colder now, not because the weather has changed, but because the world itself seems heavier. The years of conflict, displacement, adaptation, and loss have left deep marks across the plains. Yet hope still survives in the fire. Survives in families. It survives in stories. It survives in faith. And during the late 19th century, many indigenous communities search for that hope wherever they can find it. You wake beneath a grey sky hanging low over the reservation. Snow covers the ground in uneven patches. Bare trees stand against the horizon. Smoke rises from homes where families begin another difficult winter day. The atmosphere feels subdued, but not defeated. People continue living. People continue believing across many indigenous nations of the American West. A spiritual movement known as the ghost dance begins spreading during this period. The movement carries different meanings for different communities, but its central message often emphasizes renewal, healing, and the hope of a better future. The appeal's understandable. Hardship has become common. Loss has become familiar. Many people long for comfort. You sit beside a group discussing the movement. Their voices remain quiet and thoughtful. Some participants express enthusiasm. Others remain cautious. Yet nearly everyone understands why hope matters, especially now. The reservation years have brought tremendous challenges. Economic difficulties persist. Traditional lifeways remain under pressure. Government policies continue reshaping daily life. The future feels uncertain. The ghost dance offers reassurance. At least for some, historical research conducted by scholars from institutions including Yale University and Columbia University has emphasized that the movement was fundamentally spiritual in nature for many participants. It represented a search for renewal during a period of extraordinary hardship, yet not everyone understood it that way. Misunderstanding will prove costly. You travel through communities where news of the movement spreads quickly. Gatherings become more common. People discuss visions, prayers, and hopes for the weird. The atmosphere often feels peaceful, reflective, deeply emotional. Participants seek comfort in a changing world. The desire is profoundly human. Unfortunately, fear frequently grows where understanding is absent. Some government officials, military personnel, and settlers become increasingly alarmed by reports concerning the ghost dance. Rumours spread. Assumptions spread. Anxiety spreads as well. The reality and the perception begin moving in different directions. You notice the consequences immediately. Tensions increase, suspicion increases, military attention increases. The situation becomes fragile, dangerously fragile. One cold evening, snow begins falling across the reservation. The flakes drift slowly through the darkness. Families gather indoors seeking warmth and companionship. Inside one home, an elder speaks softly about earlier decades. The buffalo, the great camps, the freedom of the plains. Young listeners sit quietly. The memories feel both distant and close. A lost world still lives within living memory. The emotional transition is powerful. The older generation remembers dramatic transformations that younger people know only through stories. History feels personal, not abstract. Outside, the snowfall continues. Inside, the fire burns steadily. The contrast feels comforting. Yet beyond these walls, events are accelerating. Government officials increasingly view the situation through the lens of security and control. Military forces receive orders. Movements are monitored. Communication becomes strained. Trust erodes, fear grows. Historians continue debating specific decisions made during these tense months. Some scholars emphasize failures of communication. Others focus on broader structural pressures that made misunderstanding more likely. The debate remains important. The outcome remains tragic. Among the most significant events of this period is the death of Sitting Bull in December 1890. The circumstances surrounding his death send shockwaves through Sioux communities. The news spreads rapidly. Many react with grief. Many react with uncertainty. A respected leader is gone. The loss deepens existing tension. You sit beside a group receiving the news. Silence follows. No dramatic speeches occur. No immediate answers emerge. Only sadness. Only reflection. The emotional weight feels immense. As winter continues, groups of Sioux move across the landscape seeking safety and stability amid growing uncertainty. One of these groups eventually arrives near Wounded Knee Creek. The name will become famous. For all the wrong reasons, the days leading to the tragedy are filled with confusion, fear, and mutual distrust. Communication remains imperfect. Emotions remain strained. Military forces and Sioux families find themselves in an increasingly tense situation. You stand on the cold prairie beneath a pale winter sky. Snow crunches beneath your feet. The air feels sharp. The silence feels uneasy. Then events begin unfolding rapidly. What happens at Wounded Knee becomes one of the most painful episodes in the history of the American frontier. Men, women, and children lose their lives. The tragedy shocks observers and leaves lasting scars. The details remain heartbreaking. The consequences endure. Historical records, military reports, survivor accounts, and later scholarship have all contributed to understanding what occurred. Research from Harvard University, Stanford University, and many other institutions consistently identifies Wounded Knee as a defining moment marking the violent end of an era. The symbolism is profound. The loss is real. You imagine the cold wind moving across the snow-covered ground after the violence ends. The prairie itself seems silent. Too silent. The emotional weight settles heavily over everything. For many historians, Wounded Knee represents more than a single tragedy. It symbolizes the closing of the frontier wars and the collapse of the old plains world that had once seemed so vast and enduring. An age is ending. A chapter is closing, yet even here history refuses to end completely. The Sioux people survive, families survive, memory survives. The culture survives too, though wounded, though tested, though transformed. Night settles over the plains once more. Stars emerge above a frozen landscape. The wind continues moving across ground that has witnessed centuries of triumph, hardship, adaptation, and endurance. The old era is gone. But the story is not finished. One final chapter remains. The story of survival, the story of renewal, the story of how the Sioux carry their identity into the modern world. The wind still moves across the plains. It moved across these lands before the first Sioux ancestors followed ancient rivers. It moved across the buffalo ranges of the Great Plains. It moved across the battlefields of the frontier. It moved across the snow at Wounded Knee, and it moves across the land still. You stand beneath a broad sky at the beginning of a new century. The world looks very different from the one that existed only a few generations earlier. The buffalo herds are gone from most of the plains. The frontier is officially declared closed. Railroads cross territories once travelled only by horse and foot. Towns stand where camps once gathered. The transformation feels immense. Yet one thing remains. The Sioux people endure. That simple fact matters more than almost anything else. History often focuses on endings, it focuses on battles lost, worlds transformed, and ways of life disrupted. Those events deserve attention, but survival deserves attention too. Perhaps even more. You walk through a reservation community during the early years of the 20th century. Children play near homes. Families gather for meals. Elders continue sharing stories. Life continues, not unchanged, but alive. The challenges remain significant. Government policies continue shaping daily life. Economic opportunities remain limited in many areas. Efforts to suppress traditional cultural practices leave lasting effects. Yet communities adapt. They always have. You notice something familiar. The same resilience that helped ancestors adapt to forests, rivers, grasslands, horses, and frontier conflict remains present. The circumstances have changed. The strength remains. One evening, you sit beside an elder watching the sun set over the prairie. The sky glows orange and gold. Long shadow poems stretch across the land. The elder speaks quietly, not about defeat, not about loss, about continuity. The message feels powerful. A people are more than a single battle, more than a single generation, more than a single tragedy. The Sioux story stretches across centuries. That perspective changes everything. Throughout the 20th century, Sioux communities continue preserving traditions in countless ways. Languages are spoken. Ceremonies continue. Families teach children about their history and responsibilities, sometimes openly, sometimes quietly, always intentionally. Research from institutions including the University of Chicago and Harvard University has emphasized the remarkable cultural persistence of indigenous nations despite extraordinary pressures during the 19th and 20th centuries. The evidence is visible everywhere, not in museums alone, not in books alone, in living communities, in living families. As the decades pass, new generations pursue education, leadership, military service, business opportunities, artistic expression, and political advocacy. The paths become more diverse than ever before. The world is changing again. The Sioux are changing with it. You walk through a community gathering where traditional practices exist alongside modern realities. Elders speak with young people. Cultural knowledge is shared. Laughter fills the air. The atmosphere feels hopeful. The continuity feels real. Some historians once predicted that indigenous cultures would disappear entirely under the pressures of modernization and assimilation. They were wrong. The survival of Sioux identity stands as powerful evidence of that. Yet the journey has not been easy. Not remotely. Communities continue facing challenges involving economic development, healthcare, education, land rights, and cultural preservation. These issues remain important in the present day. History never truly ends. It evolves. The questions change. The people endure. You spend time listening to younger community members discuss the future. Their goals vary widely. Some pursue higher education. Some focus on cultural revitalization. Some work in government, business, healthcare, or the arts. The diversity feels striking and encouraging. The Sioux story is no longer defined solely by frontier conflict. It never truly was, but now that reality becomes even clearer, the story includes ancient ancestors beside rivers, farmers and hunters, storytellers and spiritual leaders, warriors and diplomats, families and children. Every generation adds something new. One afternoon, you visit a place overlooking open prairie. The grass moves beneath the wind much as it did centuries ago. The horizon remains vast. The sky remains enormous. For a moment, time seems to collapse. You think about the people who came before, the ancestors in woodland villages, the buffalo hunters crossing endless grasslands, the leaders who faced impossible decisions, the families who endured reservation years, the survivors of Wounded Knee. Their experiences remain part of the landscape, part of the memory, part of the story. Historians continue debating many details of Sioux history. They discuss migrations, political decisions, cultural developments, military campaigns, and countless other topics. Such debates matter. Scholarship matters, yet some truths remain clear regardless of interpretation. The Sioux helped shape the history of North America. They built complex societies. They adapted repeatedly to changing circumstances. They demonstrated resilience under extraordinary pressure, and they survived. As evening settles over the plains, you sit quietly beneath a sky filled with stars. The same stars watched over ancient villages, buffalo camps, frontier battles, and reservation communities. Their light feels timeless. The journey that began beside rivers centuries ago now reaches the present. Not an ending, a continuation. The The Complete History of the Sioux is not merely a story about warriors, treaties, or famous battles. It is a story about human endurance, a story about memory, a story about people who carried their culture through centuries of transformation without allowing it to disappear. The wind moves subtly across the prairie one last time, the stars shine above, and the story continues. For 20 sections, you have travelled across rivers, forests, grasslands, battlefields, council fits, winter camps, and reservation communities. Along the way, you witnessed courage, adaptation, hardship, leadership, loss, and resilience. If there was one part of the Sioux story that stayed with you most, whether it was the Buffalo World, the leadership of Red Cloud, the victory at Little Bighorn, or the endurance of families through difficult generations, share it in the comments below. I would love to hear which moment resonated with you most and where in the world you are listening from tonight. And if you enjoyed this journey through history, there is another story waiting for you on the channel, ready to carry you into another distant time and place beneath another vast sky. Until then, thank you for spending this evening here. Blessings to you and your family,